Chapter 1024 Shocked. 3. Involuntarily, Mu Yaoyao reached for her chest pocket. When she realized what she had done, it was too late. Everyone had seen it. Just then the school guards had let their guard down and loosened their grips on Duan Chaoga, who seized the chance to jump into the air and kick Mu Yaoyao in the back. Caught by surprise, Mu Yaoyao fell forward. Feng Wu and Duan Chaoga could practically read each other's mind. All they had needed to do was exchange looks. When Mu Yaoyao fell forward, a little tiger jumped out of Feng Wu's sleeve and made its way into Mu Yaoyao's chest pocket. In a split second, crack, things began to fall out of Mu Yaoyao's chest pocket. Bottles and cans fell all over the floor. Are you alright? Feng Wu even took the time to stop Mu Yaoyao from falling, so that she wouldn't crush all the bottles. Hey, isn't this secret crow bone blood? Picking up a bottle, Feng Wu smiled at Mu Yaoyao. Mu Yaoyao blanched. The others all stared at Mu Yaoyao in disbelief. Had she really? No. I didn't. Mu Yaoyao tried to explain futilely. It's secret bone blood, not secret crow bone blood. It's secret bone blood. Feng Wu replied with an "oh," drawing the sound out for effect. She smiled at Mu Yaoyao. If that really is harmless secret bone blood, drink it yourself. With that, Feng Wu seized Mu Yaoyao by the neck. Wretch! Mu Yaoyao's mouth dropped open at the force. Feng Wu undid the bottle and was going to pour the content down Mu Yaoyao's throat. Mu Yaoyao blanched with fear and trembled from head to toe. Ah, don't kill me. Grandpa, help. Feng Wu wants to poison me. She wants to kill me with secret crow bone blood. Mu Yaoyao threw off Feng Wu's hand, then ran toward Grand Secretary Feng like a cannonball. In a moment of life and death, she spared no effort as she ran away frighteningly fast. However, everyone looked at Mu Yaoyao with complicated feelings. They weren't stupid, and were able to put the pieces together. Feng Wu had guessed it right. Mu Yaoyao had tricked Yao Hao into taking secret bone blood, when it had in fact been secret crow bone blood. That was horrible. How could any young woman be this vicious? Yao Hao had been nothing but loyal to her. He waited upon her carefully and considered himself her personal guard. Yao Ying finally saw the light. She then glared fiercely at Mu Yaoyao. She charged at Mu Yaoyao. Did you kill my brother? Mu Yaoyao said, I didn't. I didn't. Yao Ying grabbed Mu Yaoyao by the hair. You gave him secret crow bone blood when you promised it was secret bone blood. You switched it out for poison. What did my brother ever do to you? Why did you have to do that? Speak. Yao Ying shook Mu Yaoyao violently. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Sob, Mu Yaoyao wept, her cheeks streaked with tears. I mixed them up. I really did. Your brother is dead and nothing can bring him back. I'll make it up to you. Yao Ying said, you can't make it up to me. Give me back my brother. I want my brother. Feng Wu stepped aside, crossed her arms, and enjoyed the show with a smile. Mu Yaoyao tried to set her up. She had just dug her own grave. If this thing with Yao Hao got out, it would be a blow to Mu Yaoyao's reputation. Chapter 1025 A Plot Twist 1. Hiding in her corner, Yi Yafei stared at Feng Wu in fear. She couldn't believe how clear Feng Wu was on the details. Not only was Feng Wu able to walk away from the trap unharmed, she had even turned the tables on Mu Yaoyao, making the latter miserable. This Feng Wu was so frightening. Why didn't they see it before? Why did they have to mess with her? Just then, stop. There came a cold, emotionless voice. The crowd turned around and saw that it was Yao Hao. The teenager was supposed to have no heartbeat, and had stopped breathing for a while. However, he had just sat up. His face was pale and there was hatred in his eyes. He kept his intense gaze on Mu Yaoyao, and the look on his face was ruthless. Mu Yaoyao's stomach lurched when she saw the look in Yao Hao's eyes. Instantly, she was overwhelmed with panic and fear. "Brother! You're alive! You're not dead!" Yaoing had already torn out a handful of Mu Yaoyao's hair. Shoving the latter to the side, Yaoing rushed over and threw herself into Yao Hao's arms. Only then did Mu Yaoyao realize what had happened. Yes, Yao Hao was alive. Yao Hao wasn't dead. Ha ha ha. Mu Yaoyao went up to Yao Hao, crouched down, and sounded as if she actually cared about him. "Yao Hao, are you alright? I promise what I gave you was secret bone blood." Feng Wu's lying. She deliberately. Yao Hao had always been so obedient to her. No matter what Mu Yaoyao said or did, Yao Hao would only look at her affectionately, dote on her, and indulge her. But now smack. Yao Hao slapped Mu Yaoyao hard in the face. Everyone was shocked. But not as shocked as Mu Yaoyao was. She stared at Yao Hao in disbelief. "You?" Staring at Mu Yaoyao, Yao Hao gritted his teeth. "I didn't know you wanted me dead so badly." Mu Yaoyao said, "It's not like that. I gave you secret bone blood." Feng Wu smiled. Princess Mu may not know this, but although secret bone blood and secret crow bone blood are almost identical in color and smell, those who are poisoned will know the difference, because secret bone blood will only seal one's cultivation power temporarily, but secret crow bone blood will destroy one's dantian, mess up their spiritual essence, and ruin their ability for good. Everyone stared at Yao Hao in astonishment. Had Yao Hao's cultivation ability been disabled temporarily, or had he been ruined altogether? But no one dared to examine him. Doing so would offend some very important people. After all, Princess Mu was Grand Secretary Feng's granddaughter, and if they found out that it really was secret crow bone blood, they would be incriminating Grand Secretary Feng. Anyone who still wanted to have a future would do no such thing. Mu Yaoyao realized that Grand Secretary Feng was her only hope. "Grandpa, help me. Help. Only you can clear my name now." Dropping to her knees, Mu Yaoyao wrapped her arms around Grand Secretary Feng's legs and cried her eyes out. She looked pitiful. Everyone couldn't help but look at Grand Secretary Feng. With the significant improvement in his cultivation level, Grand Secretary Feng had gained an even more stable status. He could easily protect Mu Yaoyao. As expected. Grand Secretary Feng reached out and patted Mu Yaoyao on the hand with his scrawny fingers. Everyone stared at him in silence. So, Grand Secretary Feng had decided to take Mu Yaoyao's side. Well, she was his granddaughter, after all. Elder Shenyuan glanced at Grand Secretary Feng and snickered inwardly. Just when he thought that the old man was so just and fair, it turned out that he was no different from other people. He had protected Feng Wu only because of Feng Xiaoqi, but Mu Yaoyao was his own granddaughter. Between the two girls, it was obvious whose side Grand Secretary Feng would take. Chapter 1026 A Plot Twist 2. At that thought, everyone looked at Feng Wu sympathetically. Although everyone had seen Mu Yaoyao's reaction and realized the damage that she had done, there was nothing they could do. With Mu Yaoyao's influential grandfather and connections, Feng Wu didn't stand a chance. Sigh, poor girl. Mu Yaoyao, on the other hand, was thrilled. She knew it. Her grandfather would still save her face in front of other people. However, before Mu Yaoyao got overly excited, Grand Secretary Feng sighed above her head. His voice was as soft as a feather and full of emotion. "Mu Yaoyao, how many times have I told you? But you keep forgetting." Wait? What was going on? They had thought that Mu Yaoyao was sure to win this, but judging by Grand Secretary Feng's tone, that wasn't the case. Everyone pricked up their ears and listened. Looking up, Mu Yaoyao pleaded with her eyes. Her hands trembled. No, not here, not now. If her grandfather revealed the truth, her future in Imperial College would be ruined. At that thought, Mu Yaoyao held Grand Secretary Feng's thigh even tighter. However, Grand Secretary Feng only looked at her and sighed. "I've told you already. It's granduncle. Why won't you listen? What? Her granduncle? Everyone stared at Mu Yaoyao in disbelief. Hadn't she been going on and on about Grand Secretary Feng being her grandfather? Her own grandfather. Nearly everyone at school wanted to fawn on Mu Yaoyao because of that. They would follow her around in flocks. However, she wasn't Grand Secretary Feng's granddaughter. Even Priest Wu was surprised. Old Feng, she's not your granddaughter. Grand Secretary Feng nodded. I adopted my brother's daughter. That explained it. Mu Yaoyao shook from head to toe. However, Grand Secretary Feng wasn't going to stop there. You tried to frame Feng Wu. Yes or no? Grand Secretary Feng stared at Mu Yaoyao, and his cold gaze gave him a majestic look. Even Elder Xianyuan was intimidated by that look, not to mention someone as young as Mu Yaoyao. Mu Yaoyao felt a numbing sensation on her scalp, and she thought she was going to explode. She could only grit her teeth and say, yes. Grand Secretary Feng said, you poisoned Yao Hao with secret crow bone blood. Yes or no? Mu Yaoyao said, yes. Grand Secretary Feng closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes, he looked calm again. You used to be such a lovely girl when you were little. Look what you've turned into. Grand Secretary Feng sighed with emotion. He then gave the verdict. From now on, you're no longer a student of Imperial College. Questions? What? There were surprised exclamations from the crowd. Grand Secretary Feng was going to kick Mu Yaoyao out of the school. Imperial College was more than a place to study and cultivate. It was a symbol of one's social status. Expelling Mu Yaoyao from Imperial College was as good as banishing her from the noble circle. It would have an unimaginable impact on Mu Yaoyao's life. No, Yu cried out. Grand Secretary Feng glanced at her. What does the school rules say, if it were another student who did this? Yu said, they would be expelled. Grand Secretary Feng nodded. You know what to do. He turned to leave after that. After taking a few steps, the old man saw that the others were still standing around, dazed, and he glared at them. Shouldn't you be in your classes now? 1027A Plot Twist 3. Yes, that was right. Those words seemed to wake the crowd from their reverie. And it only hit them after Grand Secretary Feng left with the boy. Mu Yaoyao had been expelled. But they heard the last thing Grand Secretary Feng said before he left. Not a word to anyone else. That was to say, Grand Secretary Feng didn't want anyone else to know what Mu Yaoyao had done. After Elder Xianyuan and Priest Wu left, Yu scanned the crowd with her eyes. You heard him. Not a word leaves this room. Yu paid special attention to Feng Wu. After Mu Yaoyao's defeat, it was only natural that her friends would want to cover it up. Feng Wu, on the other hand, had turned things around at the last minute to achieve a great victory. Yu worried that Feng Wu would want to spread the news. Fearing that Feng Wu might be upset, Yu held Feng Wu's hands and enjoined her in a low voice, Little Feng Wu, Grand Secretary Feng is looking out for you because of your brother, that favor won't last forever. You have to keep a low profile. Yu was really worried about Feng Wu. Because Feng Wu had been really aggressive toward Mu Yaoyao in front of Grand Secretary Feng. Not only did Feng Wu force Mu Yaoyao to reveal what she really was like, Feng Wu had also been relentless, and had driven Mu Yaoyao into a hopeless situation. Feng Wu could see that Yu only said it out of kindness, so she found it impolite to retort to her. She nodded with a smile. Yes, of course. Afterward, Feng Wu and Duan Chaoga held hands and went to Blue Cloud Court. The chief's office made sure that not a single word left the room. Those outside only knew that some people entered the office, but had no idea what happened after that. Our martial arts department's Mr. Xianyuan just entered the office. Oh God! Grand Secretary Feng's here, too. This is big. What's going to happen to Feng Wu? Expelled, at the very least. As for Duan Chaoga, she's so dead. Just as everyone was making ominous predictions about Feng Wu and Chaoga, the two of them walked out of the chief's office hand in hand. They were even chatting cheerfully. Clearly, they were in a good mood. They walked into Blue Cloud Court. And everyone was shocked to see them. OMG! Feng Wu is back. So is Duan Chaoga. Alive! Many students froze in their seats and stared at Feng Wu in disbelief, as if they had been struck by lightning. They couldn't believe it. Shouldn't Feng Wu and Duan Chaoga be locked up? They should at least be expelled. However, they didn't look like they would be kicked out anytime soon. Just then, there were footsteps outside. The crowd turned around to see Taiyi, the teacher responsible for their class. Taiyi met Feng Wu's eyes and became noticeably uneasy. Feng Wu didn't look affected. She kept her composure, glanced at Taiyi, then led Chaoga into the classroom. Mu Yaoyao and Yao Hao had the best seats in the classroom. In the end, Feng Wu took Mu Yaoyao's seat. Duan Chaoga took Yao Hao's, which made her Feng Wu's deskmate. Hey! A cold voice ran out a few steps away. Hey, you're in Miss Mu's seat. It was one of the female students. She hadn't stood out during the exam, but had fawned on Mu Yaoyao the first chance she got, and had quickly become one of Mu Yaoyao's minions. Naturally, she stepped out when Feng Wu took Mu Yaoyao's seat. However, Feng Wu. Chapter 1028 Explain the profound in simple terms 1. However, Feng Wu didn't even sneer at her. She sat there, unperturbed. Many students gloated as they looked forward to the predicament which Feng Wu was going to find herself in. That was bold. Mu Yaoyao was a princess as well as Grand Secretary Feng's granddaughter. Princess Mu had to be the most prominent new student in year 1. No one would dare offend her. And someone had just taken Mu Yaoyao's seat? The girl who scolded Feng Wu was called Wei Jing. Right now, she was glaring and sneering at Feng Wu. This girl was so dead. Getting to her feet, Wei Jing said to Taiyi in protest, "Miss." Feng Wu took Miss Mu's seat. I tried to tell her that, but she won't listen. Taiyi's face darkened. How stupid was this Wei Jing? Couldn't she see that there was a teacher in the room? She should realize that the teacher was keeping silent for a reason. However, even more students gloated when they saw Taiyi's dark face. Miss Taiyi was clearly mad. Feng Wu was going to be in a lot of trouble. Miss Mu is, recalling Grand Secretary Feng's warning, Taiyi paused mid-sentence and chose different words. Miss Mu has withdrawn from the college, so this seat is vacant now. Miss Feng can take it if she wants to. What? That announcement shocked everyone. No one saw that coming. Miss Mu dropped out. After everything we went through to get into Imperial College, she dropped out? Just like that? Why? Hey, I think I heard from somewhere that Miss Mu is a sacred lady of Firmament Palace. Has she gone back to Firmament Palace? Everyone began to talk at the same time. Taiyi shook her head when she saw how agitated and curious the students were. Cultivators were supposed to remain serene. These students didn't have the right mindset toward their studies. Quiet, please. Today, Taiyi opened a textbook and started teaching the newbies cultivation theory. Feng Wu's knowledge of cultivation theory was vast, for her beautiful master had taught her everything when she was little. With his great capability, her beautiful master was able to make the most basic theory sound incredible. Taiyi's teaching was nothing in comparison. That was why Feng Wu began to yawn midway through the class. She wondered how Taiyi had become a teacher at Imperial College. It had only been 10 minutes since the start of class, and Feng Wu had already picked up 7 errors. Feng Wu shook her head. She then quickly flipped through the Year 1 textbook, then took out some Year 2 textbooks from the storage bag which Jun Linyuan had given to her and started reading. Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu. Chaoga nudged Feng Wu with her elbow. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. Chaoga gestured at the dais. Feng Wu looked up and saw Taiyi's angry face. Feng Wu, stand up. Qiao Yi had never liked Feng Wu, and the girl's indifferent attitude only frustrated her further. She tried to give Feng Wu a hard time. Feng Wu rose to her feet and gave Qiao Yi a bewildered look. The conditions for fusing the fire element, explain it. Qiao Yi purposefully asked Feng Wu a difficult question. Fusing the fire element was something that would only be taught in Year 2, and was only briefly mentioned in the Year 1 textbook. However, Qiao Yi wanted Feng Wu to answer the question in their first class. 1029 Explain the profound in simple terms too. Many gloated, waiting to see Feng Wu get humiliated. It was a question too profound for them to answer at the moment. However, Feng Wu only darted an indifferent glance at Qiao Yi before she replied, fusing the fire element involves absorbing fire essence with the help of spiritual essence. It consists of the initial and complete fusion of the fire element. Feng Wu answered in an unhurried tone. She talked for a while, and her answer was perfect. She talked continuously for 15 minutes as she explained what the fire element was, and how to achieve the initial, complete, and final fusion. She explained everything. Some of it wasn't even in the textbook, but she was still able to answer everything clearly. Moreover, her answer was straightforward and she was able to explain the profound in simple terms. Qiao Yi's teaching was obscure in comparison, since she only lapped up information without digesting it. Feng Wu's explanation was on a whole other level. Qiao Yi didn't expect Feng Wu to know the answer. She was baffled, and her face darkened. Looking around the classroom, she saw enlightened faces and astonished looks in the students' eyes. That Feng Wu. Qiao Yi was convinced that she would be utterly humiliated if she let Feng Wu off now. In fact, if Qiao Yi had reined in her temper and praised Feng Wu for her answer, she could have avoided everything that happened next. But Qiao Yi was anything but forgiving. At that thought, Qiao Yi continued to throw difficult questions at Feng Wu. One after another. To Qiao Yi's frustration, Feng Wu was able to answer every single one, and the answers were much better than she expected. The other students listened in amazement. Soon, someone mumbled, "No wonder she got full marks in the written exam. Feng Wu really is as amazing as they say." Miss Qiao Yi wanted to give her a hard time, but I think Miss Qiao Yi is only embarrassing herself. Look at Miss Qiao Yi's face. She looks so frustrated. I bet she's already cursing in her head. She didn't have to do this. Feng Wu is only a student. Miss Qiao Yi looks so petty, getting angry over something like this. Qiao Yi heard every word of their discussion. Gritting her teeth, Qiao Yi clenched her fists. Damn it! She went on asking Feng Wu questions. At first, it was only from Year 1 textbooks, but she gradually moved on to Year 2 books. Unfortunately for her, Feng Wu was able to answer all of them, too. She then questioned Feng Wu on theory from Year 3 and Year 4 books. However, Feng Wu went on giving perfect answers, and was even able to draw inferences. She remained calm, showed no impatience, and caught every ball that was thrown her way. Qiao Yi, on the other hand, grew more frustrated and exasperated as time went by. Many students had been opposed to Feng Wu, but now, they were all shocked by Feng Wu's profound knowledge. What kind of a brain did she have? The things she knew. She was frighteningly smart. In the end, Qiao Yi went beyond the textbooks and asked, "What can you tell us about fusing two elements together, such as ice and fire? Do you know the fusion process?" If Qiao Yi had listed other elements, Feng Wu might not have been able to give an answer. However, she had fused ice and fire together herself just the other day, and she knew exactly what the answer was. 1030 Explain the profound in simple terms 3. But, explaining it wasn't as easy. Feng Wu lowered her head and pondered the question. Seeing Feng Wu remain silent, Qiao Yi let out a sigh of relief. Feng Wu was so erudite that it drove Qiao Yi crazy. Thinking that she had gotten Feng Wu, Qiao Yi was elated and didn't try to hide it. "I see you don't have an answer to that. Feng Wu, I know you're smart and you've read more than the rest of the class, but that's it. As a new student here, you still have a lot to learn, and from now on. However, Feng Wu raised her head before Qiao Yi could finish. Her eyes were bright when she said, fusing ice and fire together requires the ice and fire elements. Fusing elements together is a complicated process, but there are patterns we can follow. And she went on. Feng Wu had a nice voice, and her tone was easy and relaxed. After hearing her answer, the students all felt enlightened, as if they were going to have an epiphany. It was something that couldn't be explained with words. If they perceived it, and if they didn't, they didn't. After hearing what Feng Wu said, Qiao Yi obtained some understanding as well, but she was even more displeased when she saw that Feng Wu outclassed her. Looking around the classroom, she saw radiant faces and sparkling eyes. They had clearly all sensed something from Feng Wu's answer. Qiao Yi believed that as a teacher, she worked her guts out to deliver her lectures, but each of her students was more sleepy and unresponsive than the next. However, as soon as Feng Wu opened her mouth, these students hung on to her every word with excited looks in their eyes. Qiao Yi couldn't stand it. Shut up. Qiao Yi glared at Feng Wu. That's nonsense. These newbies are like blank sheets of paper, if they're misled by your false theory. Misled? Feng Wu smirked. Everything she said, she learned from her beautiful master. She wouldn't have shared it with anyone else to begin with, but since Qiao Yi had asked, she had replied. These students should be honored to learn from the most capable man on the continent. It wouldn't happen again. Just then. Someone in the classroom shrieked. Arg! Everyone turned their heads involuntarily. It was Wei Jing, the girl who had tried to stop Feng Wu from taking Mu Yaoyao's seat. Right now, she looked stunned, and there was a look of disbelief in her eyes. What happened? Rushing down from the dais, Qiao Yi stared at Wei Jing. Miss, I heard what Feng Wu said, and... Before Wei Jing could finish, Qiao Yi's eyes lit up, and she tried to drop the student a hint. After hearing her answer, do you feel your energy clogging up and your spiritual energy running wild? No, no, no. Wei Jing shook her head repeatedly. In the end, she gripped Qiao Yi's hands tightly. Sorry, miss, but I have a feeling, I think I can make a breakthrough now. After that, Wei Jing pushed her chair away and sat down on the cold floor as she entered a state of meditation right away. A breakthrough. The other students looked at one another and found it unbelievable. How did Wei Jing get her epiphany? Actually, I felt something after hearing Feng Wu's answer, too. It felt like I was cultivating with my head in a fog before this, but now, that fog has lifted. I felt the same, too, but the feeling disappeared before I could grab hold of it. 10:31 Feng Wu the Tutor. 1. Everyone began to talk among themselves. Qiao Yi turned around and stared at Feng Wu with a livid face and bloodshot eyes. She said, you started Wei Jing's breakthrough, if something happens to her, it'll be all on you. You can't run away from this. Feng Wu shrugged. What can possibly happen? She's having a breakthrough. Miss Qiao Yi, you worry too much. Qiao Yi said in a harsh tone, do you think a breakthrough can happen so easily? What if her cultivation goes awry? Feng Wu chuckled. Just then, Miss Qiao Yi, I'm sorry, but I have a feeling, too. Miss Qiao Yi, so do I. Sorry, Miss Qiao Yi, but... In a matter of minutes, 3 more students sat down. If Wei Jing was the only one, it could still be called a coincidence. However, 3 more sat down after that, and every single one of them had talked about a breakthrough. It had to have something to do with Feng Wu. Instantly. Everyone looked at one another in amazement, and Qiao Yi's face darkened even further. Jealousy gnawed at her heart. As for Feng Wu, she only looked surprised at the very beginning. She then sat down in her seat and looked perfectly calm. She was even in the mood to do some light reading. She took a book out of the storage bag which Jun Linyuan had given to her. The storage bag contained books which covered all the theory taught from year 1 to year 4, and Feng Wu could read them without any difficulty. 15 minutes passed. 30 minutes passed. No one spoke, and it was quiet enough in the classroom to hear everyone breathing. They wondered if those four would break through, like Feng Wu said, or if their cultivation would go awry. 45 minutes passed. There was now a light buzzing sound around Wei Jing, who had been the first to sit down. Abundant spiritual energy started to pour into her body. She absorbed every single streak of it until there was nothing left to absorb. Soon, Wei Jing opened her eyes, which were now so limpid and bright that they looked like they had been washed thoroughly. That! Rising to her feet, Wei Jing went up to Feng Wu, raised her hands, and dropped to her knees. She then prostrated herself in front of Feng Wu. She kowtowed 1, 2, 3 times. Everyone watched with their mouths agape. Did Wei Jing have a breakthrough? So, her cultivation didn't go awry. Wow, Feng Wu's words can do that. Everyone looked from Feng Wu to Qiao Yi. Feng Wu didn't look disturbed at all. Qiao Yi, on the other hand, looked humiliated. Feng Wu, I want to thank you for your teaching. I offended you, I should have known better. Please punish me however you see fit. After that, smack. Wei Jing slapped herself. Smack. Smack. She slapped herself twice more after that. Feng Wu frowned. Quiet. The others are still cultivating. Of course. Rising to her feet, Wei Jing went up to Feng Wu obediently. Her meaning was clear, she would listen to Feng Wu's orders from now on. The change in her attitude was so incredible. Clearly, Wei Jing was very flexible in her loyalties. On second thought, the others realized that if they listened to Feng Wu, they could learn more from her, and would have more opportunities to make a breakthrough. Who wouldn't want to stick to her? But, could Wei Jing's breakthrough have been a coincidence? Soon, the other 3 students all opened their eyes. Needless to say, they had made breakthroughs, too. Chapter 1032 Feng Wu the Tutor. 2. The student's spiritual essence had grown much denser. OMG! So, listening to Feng Wu can really help you improve your cultivation. My god, is Feng Wu a god or something? If people still doubted Feng Wu's ability before, with 4 successful breakthroughs, they no longer had any doubts. Instantly, everyone wanted to talk to Feng Wu and learn from her. Qiao Yi had never looked so awful. Her face went from blue to pale, and she looked miserable. It was too good a chance to pass up, and of course, Qiaoge wouldn't let her off easily. I thought Miss Qiao Yi predicted that their cultivation would go awry. With those words, all eyes were on Qiao Yi. The look on Qiao Yi's face turned grimmer. Throwing a dirty look at Feng Wu, she turned to leave. Qiaoge called after her, is Qiao Yi jealous? After all, she taught us over and over again, but just couldn't make us understand. Xiao Wu only answered one question, and 4 people made breakthroughs. Qiao Yi stumbled and almost fell. That was so humiliating. Qiao Yi rushed into the chief's office. Meanwhile, a lot of students gathered around Feng Wu. Feng Wu, I have a question. Feng Wu, about the earth element. Feng Wu, I want to ask you about the ice element. After realizing Feng Wu's capability, no one dared to show her any hostility anymore. Feng Wu was now the treasure of the class. Just then, there were footsteps outside. It was the senior year 1 students. Feng Sang led the group, followed by Wu Jing and Tao Yu. Seeing the newbies gathered around Feng Wu, Feng Sang looked furious. What she had heard was that Feng Wu had offended Mu Yaoyao and all the other newbies, which was why she was here to plunder a burning house. However, she had arrived to find the newbies gathered around Feng Wu. What was going on? Wu Jing asked one of the newbies what happened. The newbies didn't like that at all. Feng Wu had just become their treasure, one that was more effective than a cultivation pill. If this got out, the senior year 1 students wouldn't be the only ones to try and snatch Feng Wu away. Students from the other 3 years might join the competition, too. Would the newbies stand a chance when that happened? Obviously not. That was why all the newbies worked together for the first time and kept their mouths shut. No matter what the senior students asked, they just kept shaking their heads. Seeing that they weren't getting anywhere, Feng glared at Feng Wu. You've gotten our family in trouble again, haven't you? Feng Wu looked bewildered. No, I haven't. Feng smirked. You've offended Princess Mu, haven't you? Feng Wu shrugged. It was the other way round. Feng was furious. Feng Wu, are you trying to destroy our clan? Have you forgotten who Princess Mu and her grandfather are? Hand me that goddamn bet already. Feng Wu smiled. What if I say no? Feng had expected that Feng Wu wouldn't listen to her, and she had known before she came that Feng Wu wouldn't give her what she asked for. There was only one reason for her to show up here. She didn't want to be incriminated. Feng stared at Feng Wu. Are you sure? Feng Wu nodded. Feng said, if you want to bring trouble down on yourself, be my guest, but my branch of the family will have nothing to do with it. That's my final decision. Chapter 1033 Feng Wu the Tutor. 3. From now on, Feng Wu is no longer my sister, and whatever she does has nothing to do with me, said Feng. Almost all the senior students from Universe Court applauded her. However, the newbies all gave Feng strange looks. Who is this Feng anyway? Some bewildered student asked in a low voice. Feng is the daughter of the first branch of the Feng clan and the third child of her mother. She's Feng Wu's older cousin. If they're cousins, they should be pretty close, right? Won't that give her an advantage in getting help from Feng Wu first? But she just said that she has nothing to do with Feng Wu. Had Feng lost her mind? Feng Wu was practically a walking cultivation pill. One word from her worked better than 10 years in school. No newbie would dare offend Feng Wu now. They couldn't stop fawning on her, and worshipped the ground she walked. Feng was doing the exact opposite. That was bold. Everyone looked at Feng in amazement. Those looks bewildered Feng, but no one would tell her why. In the end, she could only throw a dirty look at Feng Wu and storm off. The other senior year 1 students followed Feng out. That was weird. Taiyi scratched her head. Don't those newbies despise Feng Wu? They used to gloat at her predicament. Why are they supporting her all of a sudden? Guanjing frowned as well. Aren't they afraid of offending Princess Mu? She's connected to Grand Secretary Feng. Breaking news. Someone rushed into Universe Court and announced loudly, the latest news is that Mu Yaoyao has withdrawn from Imperial College. She's already left the city and is on her way to Firmament Palace. What? Everyone was astonished. No way. They thought they knew who Mu Yaoyao was. She was the princess of the Mu family and the granddaughter of Grand Secretary Feng. Not only did the royal family like her, she had also been made a sacred lady of Firmament Palace. She was supposed to be the luckiest girl. Then, she and Feng Wu became enemies, and she dropped out. Whoosh! All eyes were on Feng right away. How well connected is your cousin Feng Wu? How did she force Princess Mu to drop out? What's Feng Wu's background? She must have some remarkable patrons. Feng, isn't she your cousin? Don't you know? Feng thought her head was going to explode. How was she supposed to know? Why was that bitch everywhere? Why wouldn't she just go away? At that thought, Feng's face turned livid. However, at that moment, OMG. I've got big news. Another student ran into Universe Court, shaking from head to toe in excitement. Feng's first reaction was to wonder what Feng Wu had done this time. However, before she could ask, the student announced, His Royal Highness is here. His Royal Highness is in the year 1 quarter. What? That shocked everyone. The Crown Prince was here. He was the legend of Imperial College. With his capability, he could have graduated years ago. However, he had repeatedly applied to postpone his graduation, and remained a Year 4 student here. Even then, it had been a while since he last visited Imperial College. What was the occasion? What brought the Crown Prince here today? Ah! Let's go! Students of Universe Court, the girls in particular, rushed out in great excitement. Where is His Royal Highness? Where did he go? He's in Blue Cloud Court. 1034 Attacked by His Royal Highness 1. Instantly, all the thousands of students of Universe Court rushed toward Blue Cloud Court. Meanwhile, in Blue Cloud Court, nearly all the students had gathered around Feng, wanting to gain her trust right away and become inseparable friends with her. One little lecture from her had been able to make 4 students break through. Hey, you people! Chang had been sitting next to Feng earlier, but their classmates were so enthusiastic that they soon pushed Chang out of the way. Chang stomped her foot in frustration. These people! One of the students tugged at Chang. You've been following Feng around and learning so much from her. Can't you give us some time with her? That's right. Aren't you staying with Feng, Chang? There's nothing we can do after you go back home, but can't we ask for her help while we're here at school? You're not the only one that has a right to go near Feng, you know. We have the right, too. They all refused to accept it. What did Chang have that they didn't? Chang stared at them in disbelief. Before, they couldn't get far away enough from Xiao, but now, the same bunch wouldn't leave Xiao's side. These people were impossible to reason with. Just then, footsteps came from outside. At that moment, a student cried out, His Royal Highness is here. What? Everyone in the classroom was stunned by the news. His Royal Highness, as in Jun Linyuan, the Crown Prince? He was here in Imperial College. That was a miracle. The Crown Prince seldom showed up here. This was rare. Everywhere Jun Linyuan went, the bustling crowd parted to make a passageway wide enough for 4 people to walk through shoulder to shoulder. Before long, a dashing, handsome teenager walked into the classroom. The teenager wore a nice-fitting brocade robe, and his exquisite features reminded one of a deity. He had a dangerous look in his sharp eyes and gave off a threatening air that gave people the creeps. As soon as he walked into the classroom, he kept his unblinking gaze on Feng, as if she was the only person he could see in the whole world. All the other people in the classroom were ants to him. He didn't even want to set eyes on them. She was the only one he could see. He was like a hunter with his eyes on his prey. The look in his eyes was fierce, and he was certain he would get what he wanted. That murderous look in Jun Linyuan's eyes gave Feng the creeps. She wasn't afraid of anything, and neither the teachers nor her classmates frightened her. However, that predatory look in Jun Linyuan's eyes gave her so much pressure that she instinctively wanted to run away. But how? If she couldn't run away from it, she had to face it head-on. Feng looked up at Jun Linyuan with her limpid, bright eyes. She was intimidated, but she wouldn't give in. The students looked from Jun Linyuan to Feng, and many were reminded of what happened in Proud Snowfield. The things Feng did to His Royal Highness. So, was His Royal Highness going to get his revenge? Before, they would be glad to see Jun Linyuan taking it out on Feng, but now, Feng was the treasure of this class. What were they supposed to do now? Fearing that Feng might be hurt, some students snuck out the back door to find a teacher. Qiao Yi wouldn't do. Chief Yu was their only hope now. Jun Linyuan kept his eyes on Feng the entire time, a ferocious, murderous look in them. The chilly and intimidating air he gave off made everyone shudder. Chapter 1035 Attacked by His Royal Highness 2. One had to acknowledge that many girls were infatuated with Jun Linyuan. Especially the seniors who were rushing over from Universe Court. After all this time in Imperial College, they had never met His Royal Highness on campus. That was how rarely Jun Linyuan showed up here. A group of girls from Universe Court were talking among themselves. Look at the way His Royal Highness is staring at Feng. It looks like he wants to tear her to pieces. That Feng Wu is unbelievable. She shows no sign of remorse after doing those things to His Royal Highness. Do you think His Royal Highness will just smack Feng Wu to death? I don't think so. After all, we're still in Imperial College. So what? Yes, school rules forbid students from fighting each other, but he's the Crown Prince. He makes the rules, not following them. Look, look. His Royal Highness is walking toward Feng Wu. I never saw that coming. After surviving Mu Yaoyao, Feng Wu is going to be killed by His Royal Highness. Seeing Jun Linyuan approach with his strong hands clenched into fists, Chaoga panicked. She rushed out and spread out her arms, shielding Feng Wu behind her. Because Feng Wu had saved her in proud Snowfield, Gongsun Qing had been having conflicted feelings toward Feng Wu, but she still couldn't help but dart a pitying look at Feng Wu. Shi Xian was much more straightforward. Taking Feng Wu's hand, she said in a low voice, "Xiao Wu, just apologize. Say sorry to His Royal Highness." The other newbies were all giving Feng Wu encouraging looks as well. They admired Feng Wu too much to see her taken out by His Royal Highness now. Say sorry? Feng Wu found that strange. She said, "What did I do? Why should I apologize?" Everyone stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. His Royal Highness was right here. With that attitude, Feng Wu was asking for death. By then, even the conflicted Gongsun Qing couldn't stand it anymore. She glared at Feng Wu. "Have you forgotten what you did? Get down on your knees and apologize to His Royal Highness." Gongsun Qing would never have warned Feng Wu if the latter hadn't saved her life. However, Feng Wu only raised her chin and said proudly, "I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I apologize?" She had saved Jun Linyuan more than once in proud Snowfield. Jun Linyuan was only an arm's length away from Feng Wu now and he raised a hand. No. Many thought that he was going to strike down at Feng Wu's head, killing her right there and then. Feng Sang's eyes widened and she could barely hide the elation in them. Kill Feng Wu. Kill her now. Stop. Just then, Yu Yu arrived in a hurry. She saw Jun Linyuan raise his hand from afar. Thinking that the Crown Prince was going to execute a lethal blow, Yu Yu was scared out of her wits. Feng Wu was a student that Grand Secretary Feng paid special attention to. Although Yu Yu believed that Grand Secretary Feng only cared about Feng Wu because of Feng Xiaoqi's ultimate spiritual body, that still made her special in a way. As Yu Yu cried out, Jun Linyuan slowly put down his raised hand and removed a pink petal from Feng Wu's head. Blood finally returned to the newbies' white faces. Miss Yu Yu had arrived just in time. A second later, and Feng Wu would have been crushed by that blow. Is it possible that His Royal Highness meant to pick that petal from the beginning? Someone suggested in a low voice. 1036 Deskmate 1. Nonsense. Have you forgotten who he is? He's Jun Linyuan, our resolute, merciless, ferocious, and arrogant crown prince. He would never pick petals out of someone's hair, especially not Feng Wu's. What's the matter with you? The only student that had come up with the question was soon dismissed by everyone else. Your Royal Highness. Yu Yu might be the chief teacher of Year 1, but she was still intimidated by the tyrannical crown prince. That was why she greeted him with a smile. Playing with the pink petal between his fingers, Jun Linyuan glanced at Yu Yu grimly before turning his gaze back to Feng Wu. He wouldn't look away. This girl had been running away from him since they last saw each other in his residence. All his efforts to try to hold her down had been futile. She wasn't going anywhere now. Yu Yu smiled bitterly, and pitied Feng Wu for her bad luck. After Mu Yaoyao, Feng Wu had to deal with the crown prince here, who happened to be the one person in the empire that she should never mess with. Yu Yu went up to them and seemed to accidentally stand in front of Feng Wu. She then smiled at Jun Linyuan. Your Royal Highness, to what does the Year 1 quarter owe this honor? Jun Linyuan cast a stern look at Yu Yu, the look in his eyes grim. Yu Yu explained immediately, the rules of Imperial College stipulate that fights are not allowed on school grounds. Feng Sun and Xianyi stood on either side of Jun Linyuan, and Feng Sun was the first to snap. Miss, are you suggesting that Boss Jun would do that? Fist fights? Boss Jun never fights other people since he can just kick their asses. That was a bold, confident statement. Many smiled bitterly at those words. Feng Sun was right. With his Royal Highness's capability, he could easily crush anyone. Only a handful of the teachers here was his match, let alone the students. Yu Yu sighed inwardly, but she said, yes, that's right. But the year 4 quarter is in Swan Court, and the 3 of you. Feng Sun grinned at Feng Wu, then said to Yu Yu, we're not here to take classes. We're making our rounds. Making your rounds? Yu Yu's stomach lurched, and she had a very bad feeling about what was coming. She was right. Feng Sun grinned. That's right. We're here to make our rounds on behalf of His Royal Highness, we're not here as students of Imperial College to take classes. So, the school rules don't apply to us. That was an outright abuse of power. Yu Yu liked Feng Wu, but that was when her own life wasn't in danger. Now that Jun Linyuan was here as the Crown Prince, she wasn't in any position to go against his will. Since young Lord Feng had referred to her as Miss, it was so obvious that he didn't think much of her title as the chief teacher of Year 1 at all. If that's the case. Before Yu Yu could go on, she saw that Jun Linyuan was staring at Feng Wu's deskmate. Duan Chaoga had been sitting there at first, but Feng Wu became so popular that Chaoga's seat was taken by a boy. And his name was Lian Xiao. Jun Linyuan's glare made Lian Xiao shake all over. His legs gave out and he fell back in the chair. But he realized right away that he had done the wrong thing, and while he wanted to stand up, his legs were too weak. That was crazy. The Crown Prince's seemingly calm eyes had a look in them that resembled 1,000 storms, which could suck out one's soul. Feng Sun couldn't stand it anymore. He rushed over, picked up the student, and tossed him to the side. He then quickly set the chair upright and even wiped the seat clean with his sleeve. Chapter 1037 Deskmate 2. His Royal Highness was a neat freak. A dirty chair would upset him, and when he was upset, he would kill someone. As expected. After Feng Sun wiped the chair clean, Jun Linyuan stepped forward and sat down proudly in it. All mouths fell open. What was going on with His Royal Highness? Outside the door, the girls from Universe Court were all baffled. He didn't throttle Feng Wu, but sat down next to her. What is he thinking? I know. What? Do you know what Ling Chi is? Of course. It's a death penalty where you cut people into the tiniest pieces and let them die in agony. That's it. His Royal Highness has to hate Feng Wu to the bone now, and killing her instantly just won't be enough to vent his rage. His Royal Highness is doing this to make Feng Wu's life a living hell. Oh God, Feng Wu will live in fear every waking moment. I told you. His Royal Highness is so clever. His Royal Highness is as amazing as always. They weren't alone. Everyone here except for Feng Sun and Xianyi thought that way. They all thought that Jun Linyuan felt that killing Feng Wu wouldn't be good enough revenge, and that he had decided to kill her slowly. Ding! The bell rang, and it was time for class. However, everyone acted as if they hadn't heard a thing as they kept staring at Jun Linyuan. The Crown Prince grew impatient. He frowned. As his spokesman, Feng Sun bellowed, "Is the class ever going to start?" Yu Yu gave Feng Wu a sympathetic glance, but there was nothing she could do, despite her wish to help. The only thing she could think of was to go to Grand Secretary Feng and ask for instructions. Yu Yu left after that. Feng Sun and Xianyi then went to the desks behind Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu, and Feng Sun rapped on one of them. Behind Feng Wu sat Hua Yin and another girl, who had been secretly pleased to sit so close to the Crown Prince. But now under young Lord Feng's intimidating gaze, they cringed and gave in. They quickly packed their stuff and went to find seats further down the row. In a matter of minutes, Feng Wu was surrounded by Jun Linyuan and his friends. This period was taught by Mr. Hu, and the subject was application of martial arts. He walked into the classroom to see the strange looks on the students' faces, which made him jump. What was going on? He scanned the classroom with his eyes and saw Feng Wu at once. He frowned. Because of her brother's special endowment, the girl had gained Grand Secretary Feng's favor and forced Mu Yaoyao out. No one would dare become her friend. Mr. Hu wondered who was the person unlucky enough to sit next to her. When he saw the person on Feng Wu's left. Holy crap. Even the experienced, level-headed Mr. Hu thought that his heart would jump out of his throat when he saw the person sitting next to Feng Wu. He couldn't believe his eyes. When he rubbed them and opened them again, he still saw the face that would make all girls in the empire go wild. Why did he know that? Because his beloved daughter was also one of the Crown Prince's fervid fans. How could he not get nervous? The Crown Prince was here in the classroom. Why, Your Royal Highness. Mr. Hu, who had been hypercritical of Feng Wu, scurried over to Jun Linyuan, bowed, and gave an ingratiating smile. Your Royal Highness, I didn't know you would be here. To what do we owe this honor? The Crown Prince lost his patience. Chapter 1038 Arrogant Deskmate 1. Jun Linyuan had darted several glances at Feng Wu, but like a dummy, she kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, which annoyed him. And then, the teacher was at his desk. The Crown Prince threw a dirty look at Mr. Hu. Do you know how to teach? Mr. Hu said, yes. Yes, of course. Jun Linyuan said, then do it. The Crown Prince didn't like to be disturbed when he was watching little Feng Wu. Mr. Hu said, yes, no problem. But he didn't know where to start. He could teach even when the principal was in the classroom, but the Crown Prince was a different story. Mr. Hu cried for help in his head. However, he had no choice but to stand on the dais and start teaching. Mr. Hu was usually a fluent speaker, but he kept stammering today. However, no one was actually listening to him, for everyone's attention was on the Crown Prince. This was the first time that they were so close to His Royal Highness. And it might be the only time in their whole lives. Why waste it on some lecture? Feng Wu could sense many pairs of eyes on her, especially from her left. The gaze was so intense that it burned her skin. She decided that she had had enough, and turned to glare at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan was looking straight ahead, but stole sideway glances at Feng Wu the whole time. Caught by Feng Wu, he was embarrassed and looked away immediately. What did this Jun Linyuan want? Feng Wu was confused. The feeling put her on edge. Just then, a boy on her right handed her a folded note. Feng Wu opened it. Don't be afraid. We're here for you. The plain words gave Feng Wu strength, and she looked to the right voluntarily. It was a familiar face that she couldn't recognize. She couldn't recognize it because she had never spoken to him. But he seemed familiar because he was one of the 4 students who had gotten a breakthrough just then. Feng Wu wrote "Thank you" on the paper. She smiled at the boy and handed the note back to him. In the face of her alluring glance and her mesmerizing smile, the boy had no chance. He was infatuated right away. When he was finally able to look down at the note, he was stunned by her beautiful handwriting. Feng Wu had learned her cursive handwriting from her beautiful master. It possessed natural grace and gave off a free and easy feel. The strokes were a combination of stillness and motion. Her handwriting was as exceptional as that of some of the greatest calligraphers in the empire. With one look, the boy was even more astonished. Feng Wu's handwriting was as beautiful as the person herself. She was like a goddess. Their seats were quite close. The boy leaned over and whispered to Feng Wu, "Your cursive handwriting has so much energy in it. May I ask who your master is?" However, that was as far as he got. The next second, he was lifted off his feet by the back of his collar. Feng Sun was so mad. He wouldn't have reacted that way if he hadn't learned that Boss Jun was in love with Feng Wu. Now that he had, he wouldn't allow any other stupid guy to go near her. The poor boy had only been infatuated with Feng Wu for a minute before Feng Sun threw him away. Smack! The boy smashed into the blackboard, and the impact made a loud bang. Everyone in the classroom was scared out of their wits, and so was the stammering Mr. Hu. Feng Wu, on the other hand, was furious. Smacking her desk, she bolted to her feet, then turned around and glared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun! What did you do that for? Wowed! Everyone stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Because class had started, the senior year 1 students of Universe Court were no longer outside the classroom. However, there were still hundreds of newbies here. And they 1039 Arrogant Deskmate 2. The hundreds of students all stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. How could Feng Wu yell at Feng Sun like that? He was young Lord Feng and the Crown Prince's buddy. Instantly, everyone quieted down and began to exchange looks of bewilderment. Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. I never knew this side of you, Feng Sun. You can't bully the weak just because you have powerful backing. I'm so disappointed. The others were so sure that young Lord Feng would hit her back, for that was what Feng Sun would typically do. However, to everyone's surprise, Feng Sun only lowered his head and looked too intimidated to speak his mind. He gave Feng Wu an aggrieved look. Why did he look like an abandoned wife? How could that be? That didn't seem right at all. Throwing a dirty look at Feng Sun, Feng Wu left her seat to help that boy to his feet. Feng Sun couldn't let her touch the boy's hands. If he let that happen, he was sure that Boss Jun would kill him later. Leave it to me. Let me. Feng Sun rushed over and helped the guy to his feet. He was very rough with his actions, which almost made the student vomit blood. Feng Wu frowned and checked the boy's pulse. Feng Sun wanted to stop her, but Feng Wu cast a stern look at him. Do you want to check his pulse, then? Feng Sun backed away in embarrassment. He didn't know how to do that. Feng Wu could feel an intense gaze on her back, which seemed to set her on fire. However, she refrained from looking back, and acted as if no one was there. After checking his pulse, Feng Wu heaved a sigh of relief. Your internal organs are unharmed, it's only some surface bleeding. A blood-clotting pill will heal you in no time. Supported by young Lord Feng, the teenager was already very anxious. When he looked up and saw the murderous look in the Crown Prince's eyes, he almost burst into tears. I'm fine. I'm really fine. Instinct told him that Feng Wu was the reason that he had gotten himself thrown out. Both Feng Sun and His Royal Highness were warning him with their eyes that Feng Wu was strictly off limits. That was why the teenager snatched the pill Feng Wu gave him, stuffed it into his mouth, then turned to run away. Feng Wu frowned. But your chest needs to be massaged to activate blood circulation. But the teenager was long gone. He had run out of sight. The Crown Prince was giving off a terrifying and suffocating energy. The air seemed to freeze, and the cold made everyone's teeth chatter. They were too scared to speak a word. What was his name? Feng Wu frowned. Tell him to come to me later. He'll need another blood-clotting pill to make a quick recovery. Feng Wu didn't know if she was mistaken, but when she asked for the person's name, the biting cold in the classroom seemed to ease a little. She went back to her seat after that. All she wanted was to get through this class safely. She wondered if her luck would hold out. Mr. Hu could barely remember what he had taught today. Realizing that it would still be a long while before the class ended, he felt like crying with frustration. He could only go back to his lecture. Jun Linyuan glanced casually at Feng Wu, only to realize that the girl had been reading her book this whole time without looking at him. Moreover, she hadn't looked at him since the beginning of the class. Did he annoy her that much? He poked Feng Wu's arm with his pen. Feng Wu moved her arm away and went on ignoring him. He poked her arm again. Feng Wu moved her arm off the desk altogether. Jun Linyuan bit his lower lip, displeased. A man in love was as good as an idiot. Although the Crown Prince hadn't realized how possessive he had become toward Feng Wu, he was in fact already under her spell. So, she had decided to ignore him, had she? Thump. Chapter 1040 Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you what? 1. Jun Linyuan smacked his desk. WTF. The students around him weren't the only ones scared, even Mr. Hu on the dais jumped at the sound. All eyes were on Jun Linyuan. He stared at Mr. Hu with eyes that reminded one of a raging storm. You made too many mistakes. Mr. Hu blanched. That comment from the Crown Prince would ruin his career. Mr. Hu could try to argue his way out of it if the critique had been from someone else, but this was the Crown Prince. The teenager would mercilessly crush any different opinions, and Mr. Hu couldn't even think about opposing him. Feng Wu frowned a little and darted a look at Jun Linyuan. He made errors on 2 figures and missed 3 key points, but everything else was fine. Surely it's nothing worth ruining his career over. And the so-called mistakes were only noticeable if one was really picky. To most people, Mr. Hu was a good teacher. However, the other students only looked at Feng Wu sympathetically. What was wrong with Feng Wu? His Royal Highness was already targeting her. What she should be doing now was to stay out of sight. Instead, she had drawn more attention to herself. Did she have a death wish or something? Would the infuriated His Royal Highness throttle Feng Wu on the spot? At that thought, the look in their eyes turned even more sympathetic. However, to everyone's surprise, the Crown Prince did no such thing. Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan was secretly enjoying the moment, for he had finally caught her attention and she was no longer ignoring him. Trying to make the best use of this opportunity, Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and went up to the dais. Mr. Hu stared at the Crown Prince in bewilderment. What was going on here? Feng Sun could read Jun Linyuan's mind. Before, he had made the wrong assumption about the Crown Prince and had been led further and further away down the wrong path. Ever since Xian Yi corrected him, however, Feng Sun could see what Jun Linyuan was doing with a single glance. Hence, Feng Sun hurried over at once and half-dragged Mr. Hu off the dais. Jun Linyuan stood there with a proud, authoritative look in his eyes. The students all remained seated, feeling anxious and flustered as they wondered what His Royal Highness was doing. It then occurred to them that this whole time, the Crown Prince had kept his intimidating gaze on Feng Wu, almost without blinking. It felt as if he wanted to eat the beautiful girl whole. How scary those eyes were. They then turned to look at Feng Wu. Despite being stared at by those terrifying eyes, Feng Wu remained seated with her back ramrod straight. The look on her face never changed and her eyes looked calm. She was such a strong character. People began to ask themselves, if they were the ones being stared at, would they be able to stay as calm as Feng Wu? The answer was no. Did you just contradict me? Jun Linyuan asked in an arrogant, domineering manner. One could detect murderous intent in his brooding eyes. How scary those eyes were. The other students all lowered their eyes and kept their gazes on the floor, trying their best not to attract any attention. No one dared to look into Jun Linyuan's terrifying eyes. They could tell that the Crown Prince was genuinely mad, and wanted revenge. Out of all the people Feng Wu could offend, it had to be the Crown Prince, who was as ferocious as any magical beast. Did she have a death wish? No one was bold enough to speak up for Feng Wu. Minding their own business was a much safer option. Feng Wu was displeased at being stared at by Jun Linyuan, and she looked pissed. She was furious inwardly. She had done a good deed in proud Snowfield by saving Jun Linyuan's life. However, not only wasn't she thanked for it, she ran into even more trouble. Chapter 1041 Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you what? 2. Just when everyone thought that Feng Wu would give in and apologize, Feng Wu bolted up and glared at the Crown Prince. Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you want? Those words shocked everyone. Holy shit. Little Feng Wu was. She had just openly retorted to His Royal Highness like an arrogant peacock. His Royal Highness. She would be killed. Everyone began to throw her warning glances, reminding her to cherish her own life. She was so pretty and so smart that they would hate to see her die. But they had clearly thought wrong once again. Standing proudly on the platform with his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan smirked. There seemed to be a dark red flicker in his black eyes. Little Feng Wu, I see that you really have a death wish. Feng Wu snorted. Bring it on. Do whatever you want. You don't scare me. Oh, no. Everyone else cried out in their heads at what was about to happen. Feng Wu was so getting killed. The crown prince seemed provoked as well. So, I see that death really doesn't scare you. Feng Wu glowered at Jun Linyuan. What's there to be scared of? I'd love to see you try and kill me. She was in a bad mood after starting the day with Mu Yaoyao trying to frame her. Then Jun Linyuan, the most unpredictable guy, showed up, annoying Feng Wu even more. Death doesn't scare you. How about what happens to them? A dangerous look flickered in Jun Linyuan's black eyes. Feng Wu was baffled. Them? How do they have anything to do with this? Jun Linyuan grinned viciously. Since you already know so much, you'll be teaching the class today. Make one mistake and all your classmates down there will pay. What's that supposed to mean? Feng Wu's pupils contracted. Jun Linyuan said, You know what I mean. Feng Wu flared up. You have a problem with me. Why take it out on them? Jun Linyuan said, Because you're not afraid of death. Feng Wu gritted her teeth. Jun Linyuan went on, But they are. Feng Wu stomped her foot. Jun Linyuan. She was sure that Jun Linyuan was doing this on purpose. The crown prince darted a satisfied glance at her, and he had a proud look on his handsome, chiseled face. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu fought back the urge to rush over and throttle him. All he ever did was bully her. Jun Linyuan's death threat didn't scare Feng Wu at all, but she couldn't say the same for the other students. One could tell how scared they were from their bloodless faces. Jun Linyuan wouldn't actually kill them, but if he wanted to vent his anger, he could easily make these students withdraw from the college. It would be a piece of cake for him. Feng Wu couldn't care less about such a threat to herself, but she would feel guilty if these students had to withdraw from school or suffered an accident because of her. The guilt would eventually become a burden to her cultivation. Thump. Feng Wu smacked the desk in frustration. She glared at Jun Linyuan without blinking. He was indeed a handsome man. With his well-defined bone structure and his exquisite features, he had a beauty that would take one's breath away and sweep them off their feet. However, with that lousy temper of his, he was just as abominable. You want me to teach this class? So be it. Bring it on. Feng Wu marched onto the dais. When she was in front of Jun Linyuan, she raised her foot to step down hard on his. Shit! The students were almost scared out of their wits. Did she want to be killed, now? However, the instant Feng Wu's foot was about to land, Jun Linyuan shifted and moved to stand behind Feng Wu. Missing her target, Feng Wu lost her footing and pitched forward involuntarily. Her exquisite face was about to smash into the desk in the first row. Chapter 1042 Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you want? 3. With a wave of his hand, Jun Linyuan pulled Feng Wu back into his arms. Thump. Feng Wu's nose bumped into Jun Linyuan's chest, making her grunt. Shit. The students in the classroom were ready to sing an elegy for Feng Wu. She was so doomed. They believed that Feng Wu was really going to die. His Royal Highness would smash her head open like he was cracking open a watermelon. It was common knowledge that His Royal Highness was a neat freak. Wasn't there a rumor where some noble young lady touched His Royal Highness's sleeve, and ended up having her entire arm cut off by the savage Crown Prince? Little Feng Wu had just flown into the Crown Prince's arms. Would he cut her into pieces? Duan Chaoga was so frightened that she wanted to stand up and cry out, Your Royal Highness, please don't kill Xiao Wu. However, she realized that she couldn't move. She felt as if she had been wrapped inside a transparent, jelly cocoon, and she couldn't move no matter how hard she struggled. Flustered and anxious, Chaoga almost burst into tears. Meanwhile, most of the other students in the classroom had covered their eyes and were peeking through their fingers, fearing what they might see. Gongsun Qing eyed Feng Wu sympathetically. However scared she was of Jun Linyuan, she still recalled that Feng Wu saved her life once. Gritting her teeth, Gongsun Qing rose to her feet. "Your Royal Highness, please spare Feng Wu's life." Her voice startled the two people on the dais, especially the proud crown prince. With Feng Wu's soft body in his arms, he was overwhelmed by the fragrance characteristic of teenage girls. There was a gentle look in the crown prince's eyes now, and he had almost forgotten where he was. All the girl ever did was run away from him, but now, she wasn't going anywhere, was she? However, what Gongsun Qing said woke Jun Linyuan up from his daydream. Spare Feng Wu's life. Where had that come from? The look in the crown prince's black eyes was so cold that it scared the wits out of anyone. Looking into Jun Linyuan's eyes, Gongsun Qing felt a cold sensation in her chest, and a chill also ran down her spine. That was so frightening. Feng Sun reached out and dragged Gongsun Qing away. He then whispered, "Boss Jun won't kill little Feng Wu. All that guy ever did was piss Feng Wu off." But Gongsun Qing didn't buy it. Clenching her fists, she looked rather sad. "Feng Wu is actually a really nice person. I haven't gotten around to telling her that I want to be her friend." Feng Sun gave Gongsun Qing a sympathetic look. The girl had been misled the way he had been, thinking that Boss Jun hated little Feng Wu. Feng Sun couldn't remember how many times he had made a fool of himself, or gotten beaten up for it. Seeing the anxious looks on the students' faces, and recalling the silly things he had done to keep Boss Jun away from Feng Wu, Feng Sun felt so humiliated. Looking up at Jun Linyuan on the dais, Feng Sun was amazed at what Boss Jun had achieved. He liked the girl, but what he did made everyone think that he hated her. He would never be able to win a girl's heart this way. Feng Wu would only hate him for his actions. As expected, Feng Wu shoved Jun Linyuan away. "Don't touch me." The other students were all speechless. Jun Linyuan smirked. "I touch you? You think too highly of yourself." The other students all nodded, agreeing with him. If the crown prince wanted to do something to a girl, she would simply lie down willingly. Feng Wu obviously wasn't a candidate. Feng Wu was so mad that her head spun. She had made up her mind. Jun Linyuan had just become the person she hated the most, bumping Zhou Qingluan down to second place. 1043 That is no way to woo a girl. To the other students' surprise, the crown prince stepped off the dais in the end. His long, straight legs took him off the dais at an unhurried pace. Scanning the classroom with his cold eyes, he reminded one of an emperor inspecting his land. His casual yet arrogant demeanor made one want to kneel at his feet. He was born to be a leader. He was born to rule the continent. Feng Wu, on the other hand, was still on the dais, without a scratch on her. She was still alive. Everyone exchanged looks of bewilderment and found it unbelievable. But that was what happened. They then turned to study the crown prince's face. Jun Linyuan had sat down in a chair, looking completely at ease. On his sculptured face, one could detect a faintly intrigued look in his beautiful eyes. He pursed his thin lips, and was smiling a little. He began to tap the desk rhythmically with his slender fingers. Clearly, he was waiting for Feng Wu to make her move. That explained it. The students believed that His Royal Highness was going to fatten the pig before he slaughtered it. Feng Wu started her lecture by succinctly sketching out the points that Mr. Hu had been vague on. She then moved on to the actual teaching. Feng Wu's talent was unquestionable. She had been taught by Mu Jiuzhou himself, and already knew enough to become an advanced tutor here in Imperial College. Teaching a simple Year 1 class was far from a challenge to her. On the dais, her eyes twinkled as she spoke in high spirits. Her face shone with the light of wisdom. In the sunlight, she reminded one of the first dew on a spring morning, and was full of life. Her refreshing beauty could take one's breath away. Given Jun Linyuan's status and popularity, he had seen his fair share of girls, although he had ignored most of them. However, he had never met someone so attractive, who seemed to shine from within. Even someone as experienced as Jun Linyuan was infatuated, to say nothing of other people. Everyone was immersed in Feng Wu's teaching, amazed looks in their eyes. Scanning the room out of the corner of his eye, Jun Linyuan saw that all the boys in the classroom were fascinated by Feng Wu, and he didn't like that at all. Thump. Feng Wu was enjoying teaching, when the crown prince smacked the desk. The sound made everyone jump. All of them had been hanging on to Feng Wu's every word, taking in the cultivation world she described and savoring the profound knowledge in her teaching. The more they chewed on her words, the more mysterious they found them to be. However, that train of thought was broken at that critical moment. All eyes turned to the man at the center of the classroom. No one dared to utter a word or express their anger, but they certainly weren't happy about it. Feng Wu had noticed that several students had almost reached epiphanies, and had planned to continue teaching until they could break through. However, Jun Linyuan's interruption destroyed that opportunity for them. Feng Wu was infuriated. However, before she could speak, Jun Linyuan said, "Get your ass down here." Feng Wu's face turned livid. Behind Jun Linyuan, young Lord Feng and Xianyi exchanged looks, and saw resignation in each other's eyes. Boss Jun was hopeless. Unlike the others, the way he courted a girl would actually push the girl further and further away. However, Jun Linyuan couldn't hear Feng Sun and Xianyi's thoughts. At that moment, he was very displeased. So many pairs of infatuated eyes were glued to his woman, but she was completely clueless. How could he be happy? 1044 Bullying is affection. Didn't you hear me? Get the hell off that dais. How long did she plan to stand there and be gawked at for? There was a frown on Jun Linyuan's stunningly handsome face, and he looked displeased. He said, "I'll let you off the hook today. Interrupt a class again, and I'll have you kicked out of this college." He trusted that after this, no other boy would dare sit next to her or have a private conversation with her. Feng Wu was so frustrated. He was the one who made her give the lecture, and when everything was going fine, he told her to get her ass down from there. He had threatened her with her classmates' lives before cutting her off. So what if he was the crown prince? Big deal. Feng Wu was furious. Her cheeks flushed and blue veins popped in the corner of her forehead. Given the option, she would throttle Jun Linyuan right now. However, she had neither the capability nor the power. Humph. She would find the broken star pieces and cure her beautiful master. No one would pick on her again when her beautiful master was around. At that thought, Feng Wu threw a frustrated glance at Jun Linyuan, then ran out of the classroom. Feng Wu had run away. The other students stared in bewilderment. The crown prince had let Feng Wu run away. She was able to get away after offending His Royal Highness. The crown prince's face couldn't be any darker. His black eyes seemed to be covered with a bloody red mist. Rising to his feet, he stepped out on long legs, and the next second, he was nowhere to be seen. Feng Sun and Xianyi exchanged looks. Now that Boss Jun and Feng Wu were gone, there was no need for them to remain here any longer. Hence, they took off as well. They left as fast as they had come, and were out of sight in no time. A hush fell over the classroom. Outside, Feng Wu rushed out in frustration, and needed an outlet for her anger. That Jun Linyuan was such a jerk. She would love to see him pull that arrogant stunt again after her beautiful master woke up. Feng Wu was still angrily headed for the school gate, when a tall figure suddenly blocked her path. She had been walking with her head down as she complained inwardly about Jun Linyuan, and hadn't been paying attention to where she was going. She bumped into the man. The impact made Feng Wu see stars. Cursing under her breath, she thought she had to be having the worst day of her life. Why did she keep bumping into people? However, her face turned livid as soon as she looked up. Jun Lin Yuan. Feng Wu uttered his name through gritted teeth. Seeing Feng Wu's bruised nose and teary eyes, Jun Linyuan felt himself go soft inside. He raised a hand to touch Feng Wu's nose, but Feng Wu was on the alert and only backed away. She glared at him furiously. Just then, Feng Sun and Xian Yi arrived in a hurry. Feng Wu turned her teary eyes on Feng Sun. It pained Feng Sun to see her like that. That was his baby sister, and she looked as pitiful as a puppy dog. He couldn't bear to see her like this. Feng Sun rushed to her in a hurry. "Kiddo, what happened? Who did this to you?" Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun with tears welling up in her eyes as she pointed at Jun Linyuan. "It's him. Now get revenge for me." Feng Sun rubbed his head with a bitter smile. As her big brother, he would have lunged at the guy who dared to pick on her. However, that guy just happened to be Boss Jun. And he was only bullying her as a way of showing his affection. "Come over here." Feng Sun led Feng Wu behind an old tree. He then said in a low voice, "My dear sister." Chapter 1045 Jun Linyuan, I hear that you like me. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun. "If I'm still your sister, beat him up for me." She decided that she would stop reasoning with him and do as she pleased. Feng Sun felt a headache coming on, and he tried to reason with her. "Dear sister, it's not what you think. Boss Jun is actually..." Feng Wu said, "Are you saying that he doesn't pick on me?" Feng Sun said, "No, he does do that." Feng Wu said, "So, your sister gets bullied, and you're going to do nothing? What kind of brother are you?" Feng Sun said, "You're my dearest sister, but some guys show their affection by picking on the girl they like. You see where I'm going with this?" Feng Sun knew that Boss Jun was beyond saving, but he might be able to persuade little Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu almost choked on her own breath after she heard that. Cough, cough. She flushed, gasping for air. "Sister, are you all right?" Feng Sun reached out to hold Feng Wu's hand, but she threw him off. She looked at Feng Sun as if he was an idiot. "Are you telling me that your boss Jun likes me?" Feng Sun nodded repeatedly. "Yes, that's it." As unbelievable as it sounded, he was telling the truth. He had also learned it the hard way. Feng Wu said, "You're saying that your boss Jun is bullying me only because he likes me?" Feng Sun kept nodding. "Yes. That's right." Feng Wu gave him a "what an idiot" look. "Gimme your hand." Was she trying to check her pulse? Did she think he was nuts? Feng Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew how unbelievable it sounded, but it didn't make what he said any less true. He tried to convince Feng Wu. "Xiao Wu, if you try to understand Boss Jun, you'll see that he actually likes you a lot." Feng Wu snorted. "He likes me. He bullies me because he likes me. By abusing me, setting me up, and annoying me. If that's how liking someone works, I'm sorry, that's too much affection for me to take." Feng Wu thought Feng Sun had lost his mind. From Feng Wu's point of view, Jun Linyuan had shown nothing but antagonism and repulsion toward her. He was mean, domineering, and vicious. And Feng Sun called that affection? Feng Sun scratched his head. He knew that Boss Jun had a strange way of courting a girl, but that didn't make what he said any less true. Feng Sun tried to convince Feng Wu, using what Xian Yi told him before. However, he had only just started, before Feng Wu pushed him away and ran off. She stood boldly in front of Jun Linyuan and met his gaze with her bloodshot eyes. She smirked. "Jun Linyuan, I heard that you like me. Is that true?" She took the initiative. That was so straightforward. Instantly, everything fell into a hush, and it became so quiet that everyone could hear their hearts beating. For a brief moment, Jun Linyuan forgot to breathe. He tensed up and his mind went blank. He didn't know what to do. He could see the taunting and scornful look in Feng Wu's eyes. Did he like her? Jun Linyuan didn't know the answer to that, but he did know that he couldn't admit it even if the answer was yes. The last thing he wanted was to be laughed at by this girl. Raising her chin proudly, Feng sneered at Jun Linyuan. She then glowered. Feng Sun said you like me. Is that true? Feng Sun. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted, and a dark red mist seemed to blur his vision again. Chapter 1046 Taiyi Formation. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted, and a dark red mist seemed to blur his vision. He then turned his sharp gaze on Feng Sun. Poor Feng Sun. The Crown Prince's ferocious glare froze him in place. Staring at Jun Linyuan, Feng pressed. She repeated the question. Is that it? You like me? Both Feng Sun and Xianyi stared at Jun Linyuan unblinkingly. Tell her. Now. Your Royal Highness, she'll never know your feelings if you don't tell her. However, Jun Linyuan had seen the sneer in Feng Wu's eyes, and a guy as proud as he was would never admit the truth. Of course I don't. Don't flatter yourself. The Crown Prince was all about saving face, and he glared at Feng Wu for what she said. Oh God. Exchanging looks, Feng Sun and Xianyi both cried out in their heads. Naturally, Feng Wu flushed again, and she turned to glare at Feng Sun. Is that what you call, like me? Feng Sun was rendered speechless. Before he could explain, Feng Wu ran off. Hey, Feng Sun stomped his foot in frustration. Turning around, he wanted to complain to Jun Linyuan, but before he could say anything, Jun Linyuan's intimidating energy had already filled the air. The unbelievable power almost crushed Feng Sun and Xianyi's spines like an enormous mountain. Both of them broke out sweating and felt chills run down their spines. Humph. Jun Linyuan's already dark eyes seemed to turn even darker. They could smell danger in the air, as if a storm was brewing. The Crown Prince flipped his sleeves and stormed off. Xianyi and Feng Sun were left behind, eyeing each other in bewilderment. Both their backs were hunched, as if they had a mountain on their shoulders, for Jun Linyuan's energy had expanded to fill the entire area. Feng Sun gave Xianyi a pitiful look. Now I know what it's been like for you. Xianyi shrugged. Feng Sun said, why do I feel that we've made it worse? Xianyi shrugged again. Feng Sun said, will the two of them ever stop? They're so unpredictable and they fight non-stop. But in the end, we're the ones who suffer the consequences. Xianyi heaved a sigh. Feng Sun asked, what are we going to do now? Xianyi said, just let it be. Feng Wu headed back home, still angry, and Chaoga caught up to her on the way. Xiao Wu, are you alright? Chaoga was concerned. Feng Wu gritted her teeth. Chaoga looked at her sympathetically. I don't know what it is with His Royal Highness. Why are you the only one he picks on? What are we gonna do? Feng Wu ground her teeth. Chaoga said, we've only been in school for a day. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. Chaoga was right. It was only the first day of school, and she still had 4 more years to go. After she got back home, Feng Wu jumped into Feng Manor right away. Grand Secretary Feng stayed at home most of the time these days, since he could cultivate more efficiently thanks to the Taiyi formation. You want to withdraw from school? Grand Secretary Feng was teaching Feng Xiaoqi when Feng Wu arrived, and he looked up at her after hearing those words. Feng Wu said, not exactly. I'll be studying on my own outside school, and I'll only show up for the exams. Stroking his beard, Grand Secretary Feng gave it some thought. You're only in year 1 and the formation classes are indeed too easy for you. Try to cultivate in the Taiyi formation for a few days, pick the spot you find the most efficient. Feng Wu was elated. Having the principal of Imperial College as a friend sure came in handy. For the next 3 days, Feng Wu stayed in the Taiyi formation for her cultivation. Chapter 1047 His Royal Highness. All the time she spent in the Taiyi formation paid off. After Feng Wu started cultivating, she felt the spiritual energy flow freely into her body without any hindrance at all. The spiritual essence ran into her body like mischievous fairies. She couldn't stop it even if she wanted to. Feng Wu was a level 6 spiritual grandmaster, and after 3 days, she reached perfection at that level. She was that close to making a breakthrough. But to achieve that required serendipity, and Feng Wu was stuck. The breakthrough just wouldn't happen. Feng Wu stopped cultivating and opened her eyes. Right after that, she met Grand Secretary Feng's knowing eyes, which still had a surprised look in them that he wasn't quick enough to hide. "You're about to make a breakthrough again?" Grand Secretary Feng looked at Feng Wu in amazement. He had never seen a kid make such swift progress. She had only just leveled up, but she was ready to move on to the next level again. Feng Wu smiled. "The Taiyi formation is as amazing as it's said to be. It only takes me half the time to cultivate." Feng Wu had thought that it would be a while before she reached the spiritual elder stage. As it turned out, she didn't have to wait that long. A spiritual elder. That was what Jun Linyuan was now. Just then, there was knocking on the door outside. Feng Wu looked at Grand Secretary Feng in bewilderment. Grand Secretary Feng frowned. "It's them again." "Them?" Feng Wu asked curiously. Grand Secretary Feng frowned a little and didn't reply. Steward Feng answered with a wry smile, "Ever since my old master's sensational breakthrough, a lot more people started visiting us. It used to be very quiet here." Feng Wu could see why that was the case. After his retirement, Grand Secretary Feng had had far less visitors. However, now that he had been promoted to Principal of Imperial College, and with his capability now on par with Mr. Liu's, it was only natural that more people would start to show up. It was just that Grand Secretary Feng had turned all of them away to have some peace and quiet. Since the Taiyi formation extended all the way to encompass Fallen Star Yard, Feng Wu could cultivate at home as well. Qiuling, Uncle Qiu, and Chaoga were all absorbing the spiritual essence and working on their cultivation there. Feng Wu came back to Fallen Star Yard to find the place very quiet. Everyone was working hard. As she was free at the moment, which was very rare, Feng Wu sat down under the grape trellis and considered her current situation. Since she had found the first broken star piece, it was time she started looking for the second one. Feng Wu couldn't wait to get all the pieces. But, where could the second piece be? Feng Wu had no idea at all, but she faintly recalled that Jun Linyuan had mentioned that it was in Imperial College. Feng Wu couldn't sit still anymore. She ran next door to Grand Secretary Feng. "Broken star pieces?" Grand Secretary Feng frowned. Feng Wu asked, "Have you never heard of them?" Grand Secretary Feng shook his head. "As a matter of fact, I haven't." "Are they very important?" Feng Wu seldom looked this serious. "More important than my life." Grand Secretary Feng didn't say anything in reply. It seemed that they were really very important. Maybe the other elders know about it. "Hold on." Grand Secretary Feng then contacted the others. Feng Wu waited patiently. Meanwhile, in the Crown Prince's residence. Feng and Granny Gong stood outside the study in utter silence, exchanging not a single word. Granny Gong then heaved a sigh. His Royal Highness has shut himself inside for 2 days. When is he going to break free of this mood? Feng looked up at the sky. Chapter 1048 Broken Star Pieces. Because of the Crown Prince's rage, dark clouds had gathered overhead, covering the entire sky over the residence. Cold air filled the place and everyone was as silent as cicadas in autumn. It was too scary for them to utter a word. Feng sighed in resignation. Chang San, the captain of the guards in the residence, was standing next to Feng's side at the moment. "Mr. Feng, His Royal Highness has been in a bad mood for 2 days. It's never been this long before." Chang San pulled a long face. He must have reprimanded over 100 officials and generals already. Reprimand was an understatement. To be more precise, he had given them absolute hell. Feng smiled bitterly. It had really been going on for too long. Who offended His Royal Highness this time? Chang-san cringed. And when is it going to end? Luckily, His Royal Highness had only lashed out at the civil and military officials and the generals of the Imperial Guards. None of his close subordinates had been affected yet. But who knew what could happen if his mood stayed like this? Just then, Chang-san, get you ass in here. The Crown Prince's grumpy voice came from inside the room. Chang-san's eyes widened, and he turned to Feng for help. What should he do now? Feng and Granny Gong looked the other way, as if they hadn't heard a thing. Chang-san had to force himself to go in when in fact, he wanted to cry for help. Soon, they hear angry roars from inside. Both Feng and Granny Gong felt their stomachs lurch. Chang-san came out about 15 minutes later with blood oozing from his ears, nostrils, and the corner of his mouth. He looked listless. When the captain saw Feng, he almost burst into tears. Who on earth offended His Royal Highness? Chang-san hadn't seen that coming, and he was devastated. Who do you think? Feng darted a glance at Chang-san. Luckily, Chang-san was no fool. He saw the light right away. Do you mean Miss Feng Wu? Feng raised his head, looking like he knew nothing at all. Rolling up his sleeves, Chang-san headed for the door. Feng asked, "Where are you going?" Chang-san said, "To find him a fire extinguisher." And he didn't go alone. Together with a team of his men, Chang-san headed for the Feng Manor. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was waiting for the result of Grand Secretary Feng's inquiry. If Grand Secretary Feng could find a lead on the broken star pieces, she wouldn't have to go to Jun Linyuan anymore. God knew how irritated she was even at just the thought of Jun Linyuan. The anger was simply uncontrollable. How did it go? Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Feng nervously. Grand Secretary Feng nodded at her. I don't have the exact location of the broken star pieces, but I have a lead. Really? Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Something was better than nothing, she could work with that. What lead? Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Feng earnestly. Grand Secretary Feng was secretly surprised. He had never seen the girls so devoted to something. He told her, Shenyuan-kun is the person you should start working on. As in Elder Shenyuan? Feng Wu's eyes flickered. Elder Shenyuan was one of the 7 members of the education board, and back in Yu Yu's office, that old man had wanted Feng Wu dead. Grand Secretary Feng recalled the incident as well, and his face darkened. Shenyuan-kun isn't exactly your friend. Moreover, the Shenyuan clan has close ties with the Zhua clan. You. By now, Grand Secretary Feng had learned about the enmity between Feng Wu and Zhua Qingyuan. He couldn't help but worry about her dealing with the Zhua family. Chapter 1049 Where S. Feng Wu. It's better than nothing, Feng Wu said with a brooding look in her eyes. As long as she had something to work with, she would find those broken star pieces, no matter what it took. Back at the Feng Manor. Thump. 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 Someone banged on the gate of the Feng Manor. Ever since Feng Wu's beautiful mother beat the crap out of Feng Yanfeng the other day, the guy had been too humiliated to leave the house. He had stayed at home, claiming to be sick. The day he finally summoned up the courage to go out, the elderly steward came in. He said, "Master, we have trouble." Feng Yanfeng frowned. "Why are you panicking?" The old steward's forehead was covered with sweat. "There are people banging on our door." Banging on their door? Feng Yanfeng was furious. Who did these people think the Feng clan was? Feng Yanfeng rose to his feet. Who the hell are these people? The old steward said, "It's General Chang, as in General Chang who works for His Royal Highness. He's kicking the door down." His Royal Highness's General Chang. Next to Feng Yanfeng, Feng Lu and Feng Sang were thrilled to hear the news. So, His Royal Highness was really going to teach Feng Wu a lesson this time. Come, let's have a look. With Feng Lu and Feng Sang running at the front, Feng Yanfeng followed them out with conflicted feelings. No one would dare to ignore those who worked for His Royal Highness. And the Feng Manor's doors weren't going to stop someone like General Chang. By the time Feng Yanfeng and the others rushed out, General Chang was already in the main hall. Feng Yanfeng went up to him in a hurry. General Chang. Feng Yanfeng was a high-ranking official, but he still didn't dare offend General Chang. With a stern look on his face, Chang San turned his sharp gaze on Feng Yanfeng. He waved at Feng Yanfeng. Chief Feng, let's cut to the chase. I'm not here for you. Show me to Miss Feng Wu, please. So, they really were here for Feng Wu. Judging by his attitude, Feng Yanfeng didn't think General Chang would be too polite to Feng Wu. Before Feng Yanfeng could say anything, Feng Lu stepped out. I know where Feng Wu lives. I'll show you the way. Chang San turned his sharp gaze on Feng Lu. Soon, they arrived at Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu was at Grand Secretary Feng's place at the moment. Since Grand Secretary Feng was able to extend his spiritual essence quite some distance now, he naturally detected Chang San and his men. You have visitors in Fallen Star Yard. I think you should go back now, Grand Secretary Feng reminded Feng Wu. Grand Secretary Feng had been telling Feng Wu Elder Xuanyuan's life story, for the better she knew her enemy, the higher her chances of victory. Since Feng Wu wanted to get some leads from Elder Xuanyuan, she needed to learn more about him first. But she was interrupted halfway, which meant that she wasn't in a good mood at all. After bidding Grand Secretary Feng farewell, Feng Wu jumped over the wall back into her Fallen Star Yard. By then, everyone in the yard who had been cultivating was roused. Chaoga, Chioling, Uncle Chio. Everyone was frowning and looked displeased. Of course they were unhappy. How else should they react when they were interrupted in the middle of their cultivation? Chaoga glared at Feng Lu. Feng Lu smirked. Duan Chaoga, you're not a member of the Feng clan. You have no right to speak. Chaoga smirked back. I'm not a Feng clansman, but I'm a member of Fallen Star Yard, which you're not. You're the one who should shut up. Seeing the displeased look on General Chang's face, Feng Yanfeng snapped, Shut up, everyone. Instantly, everyone quieted down. General Chang walked in and scanned the yard with a frown. Where's Miss Wu? Feng Yanfeng glared at Duan Chaoga. Where's Feng Wu? Chapter 1050 That doesn't seem right. Chaoga didn't reply, for she had been cultivating and had no idea where Xiao Wu went. Did Feng Wu get wind of this and go into hiding? Feng Lu snorted. Chaoga asked, Get wind of what? Why should she hide? Feng Lu said, Duan Chaoga, don't tell me you don't know who this gentleman is. Let me enlighten you. This is General Chang, and he works for His Royal Highness. And now, General Chang is here to arrest Feng Wu. She must have heard of this somehow, and absconded to avoid punishment. I pity you lot here. You know nothing when Feng Wu has abandoned you all. Abscond? Arrest? Those are some bold statements. A calm voice came from inside the house. They looked up to find the slim and graceful teenage girl smiling at them with her arms crossed. Her face glowed like peach blossoms in March, and the careless smile on her face wasn't the expression of one who was going to be arrested at all. She was neither nervous nor did she panic. Feng Lu smirked when she saw Feng Wu. Karma is a bitch, and retribution will come eventually. Feng Wu, your time is up. Is that so? Feng Wu gave her a half-smile. Xiao Wu, the beautiful lady, had walked out of the house when no one was looking, and she nervously took Feng Wu's hand. There was panic in her eyes. She was worried about Feng Wu. Feng Wu noticed that her mother's exquisite face was utterly white. She then recalled what happened the other day, and looked pained. She felt sorry for her mother. When the beautiful lady went berserk, she was stunning, spectacular, and unbelievably powerful. However, she had been completely worn out after she fainted, and had only gotten better in the past few days. Feng Wu knew that entering such a berserk state came at a price, and for her mother, that price was her health. Of course, she wouldn't let something like that happen to her mother again. Staring at Chang San, Feng Wu looked displeased, and her face darkened. Chang San's stomach lurched. "I'm fine. Mum, don't worry. Granny Zhao, help my mother inside." What annoyed Feng Wu was the fact that these people kept coming here uninvited and started pointing fingers at her right away. How dare they? Feng Lu was still nagging, but Feng Wu ignored her completely. With an emotionless face, Feng Wu went straight to Chang San and stared at him with her cold eyes. Her thin red lips reminded him of blood. Glaring at General Chang, Feng Wu snorted. "Chang San, how dare you break into my fallen star yard? Just arrest her." Feng Sang and Feng Lu looked expectantly at Chang San, hoping to see him act as arrogantly as when he had first arrived. However, to everyone's surprise, Chang San didn't reply. He kept silent. "Did Jun Linyuan send you here to arrest me?" The thought of Jun Linyuan made Feng Wu want to snap. Feng glowered at Feng Wu, astonished by how bold the girl had become. She had just referred to the crown prince by name. Surely General Chang would punish her for that. However, Chang San only said, "No, it's not like that. His Royal Highness doesn't know I'm here." Feng Wu asked, "Then what are you doing here? To show off how powerful you are?" Chang San waved his hands repeatedly. "No, of course not. How can someone as petty as me do that in front of you, Miss Wu? It's just a misunderstanding, a big misunderstanding." "What?" Feng Lu and Feng Sang, who had been excited to see what was going to happen next, exchanged astonished looks. That didn't seem right. General Chang had been so domineering earlier, and hadn't even shown their father much respect. Chapter 1051 Abducted. However, not only didn't Chang San talk back, he even repeatedly apologized to Feng Wu. What was going on here? Feng Wu stared at Chang San. "Then what are you doing here?" Recalling the depressing atmosphere in the Crown Prince's residence, Chang San was about to say something, when he turned his head to look at the baffled Feng Lu and her family. Eyes brooding and face emotionless, General Chang asked, "Master Feng, isn't there somewhere else you need to be?" Feng almost lost his temper at those words. What was that supposed to mean? Where else should he be? This General Chang showed him no respect whatsoever. However, despite his grievance, Feng still smiled obsequiously. "Yes, General Chang, I won't bother you anymore." Feng shot Feng Sang and Feng Lu warning glances on his way out. As reluctant as Feng Sang and Feng Lu were, they had no choice but to follow their father out. Feng Wu stared at Chang San. Chang San gave Feng Wu a broad smile as soon as Feng left. "Miss Feng Wu, sorry for the intrusion. I didn't mean to offend you." Since Feng Wu despised Jun Linyuan, she wasn't very amiable toward Chang San either. She waved at him impatiently. "I don't need your apology, as long as you leave me alone." "Please leave." Chang San smiled at Feng Wu, but wouldn't move. Feng Wu glowered. "Why are you still here?" Chang San said, "Miss Wu, please come with me to His Royal Highness's residence." "What if I say no?" Feng Wu snorted. She wasn't blind. She could tell that Chang San hesitated for a brief moment. "Miss Wu, are you really not going?" "No." Feng Wu snorted. Rising to his feet, Chang San looked at Feng Wu with a stern look on his face. If soft talk wouldn't work, he would have to resort to sheer force. If that's the case, Chang San shot a glance at his men. Instantly, all 4 men dashed toward Feng Wu. Guards of the Crown Prince's residence were all capable men, and these 4 had been chosen from the Imperial Guard. They were spiritual elders. Feng Wu was shocked. Despite their ordinary appearance, every single one of these guards was a spiritual elder. Feng Wu was only a level 6 spiritual grandmaster now, and she was far from their match. She was subdued in no time. "Miss Wu, sorry about this." Chang San tossed out an immortal restraining rope. It was just a thin rope, but seemed to be full of spiritual essence. It then wrapped around Feng Wu like a spiritual snake. Instantly, Feng Wu was tied up in a bundle. The 4 guards then held Feng Wu high above their heads. It might sound like it took a long while, but the whole process from the guards charging out to Feng Wu getting tied up happened in less than a minute. "Let's go." With a wave of his hand, Chang San led his men out. Duan Chaoga and the others were furious. However, as soon as they rushed out, General Chang waved his hand. Thump. Duan Chaoga and the others fell back to the ground, pressing her hand to her chest. Chaoga tried to rush out again, but Feng Wu stopped her. "Chaoga, stop." Chang San could be relentless, and Feng Wu didn't want Chaoga to take unnecessary risks. Chang San and his men were efficient. In a matter of moments, they left the Feng manor, jumped onto their horses, and rushed toward the crown prince's residence. Feng Yanfeng, Feng Lu, and Feng Sang looked at one another in bewilderment. Seriously? Judging by General Chang's attitude, he seemed nice toward Feng Wu, but why had he carried her off all of a sudden? Exactly what does His Royal Highness think of Feng Wu? Feng Yanfeng was dumbfounded. He wouldn't know how to treat Feng Wu unless he knew what the crown prince thought of her. Chapter 1052 Jun Linyuan. Did he kidnap her to become his concubine? Feng Lu said with flickering eyes as she bit her lower lip. Feng Sang looked at her. Do you mean? Feng Lu's face turned grim. His Royal Highness will never get over what Feng Wu did to him. His only option now is to humiliate Feng Wu and torture her to death. Only then will he be able to vent all his anger. Feng Lu shook her head. I'm afraid. Feng Wu is never coming back. A beauty who had perished. Those words came to their minds right away. Feng Wu didn't know that Feng Lu and the others already saw her as a dead person. Right now, she was feeling utterly frustrated. These abominable guards. As if tying her up wasn't enough, they had done so in the fashion of a traditional Chinese rice pudding, and she was carried over someone's shoulder as the guards rode along the streets on horseback. Anyone with eyes saw it. She was so humiliated. Luckily, her face was covered as well, and she hoped no one had eyes sharp enough to recognize her. However, cold air filled her lungs on the ride, and it was awful. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu blamed Jun Linyuan for everything. When General Chang cheerfully carried the bundled-up Feng Wu to the study. Feng couldn't help but give it a second look. What's that? General Chang couldn't wait to take credit for his achievement. Mr. Feng, didn't you say that it was better for the doer to undo what they did? Here comes the doer. Feng looked astonished. Before he could react, General Chang had marched into the study with Feng Wu, the rectangular bundle under his arm. Feng was speechless. He had never looked so anxious before. Granny Gong was equally shocked. The 2 old servants exchanged astonished looks. Then they involuntarily moved away from the study until they were 100 meters away. Only then did they turn around and give Chang San sympathetic looks. Do you think we'll ever see Chang San alive again? Even someone as experienced as Granny Gong had a hard time accepting this reality. Feng rubbed his forehead. I think we'll be needing a new chief of the guards. In the study. Hearing the noise, Jun Linyuan turned around, and his black pupils contracted. The energy he gave off was frighteningly cold. General Chang tossed Feng Wu on the ground, then saluted the crown prince. Your Royal Highness, I brought you Miss Feng Wu. Please find the enclosed subject. Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted. The enclosed subject? Under the rope, Feng Wu was astonished. Tied up from head to toe, Feng Wu wriggled violently. One could sense her fury even through the thick rope layers. Dumbfounded, Jun Linyuan was still trying to digest this piece of information. Jun Linyuan. Let me out. Feng Wu was so furious that she thought she was going to burn a hole in herself with her fury. Only then did Jun Linyuan finally come back to himself. If the look on his face had been stern before, it had just turned into embarrassment. Jun Linyuan gave General Chang an indecipherable look. Meanwhile, General Chang was very pleased with himself. According to Feng, His Royal Highness was in love with Miss Feng Wu, which was where his bad mood had come from. Now that Chang San had brought her here, His Royal Highness hadn't gotten angry right away. As for how he had brought her here, why did it matter? The result was the most important thing. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu bellowed. Chapter 1053 I don't ever want to see you again. By then, Jun Linyuan had finally come back to himself, and with a flick of his fingers, the immortal restraining rope wrapped around Feng Wu broke into pieces and fell all over the floor. And the color of Feng Wu's face had already turned a purplish red. Bah! She spat out the rope that had been stuffed into her mouth. After rinsing her mouth, Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan with eyes that could spit fire. She then rushed at Jun Linyuan at full speed. Even His Royal Highness couldn't help but cringe when faced with the girl who resembled a cannonball. Jun Linyuan. Standing in front of him, Feng Wu saw red. Jun Linyuan was speechless. The intimidating, life-threatening air around him had vanished to be replaced by a look of embarrassment. Have I offended you somehow? Why did you have me kidnapped? Jun Linyuan said, Feng Wu pressed forward, and His Royal Highness stumbled back. Feng Wu said, what's your problem? Did you have to see me that desperately? Couldn't you have invited me nicely? Did you have to tie me up in a bundle and carry me all the way here in broad daylight? Do you even care about my dignity? Jun Linyuan said, Watching from the side, General Chang was astonished. Seriously? His young master, the domineering, arrogant, and relentless crown prince, was losing ground to Feng Wu? Moreover, his eyes couldn't stop darting around diffidently when faced with Feng Wu's questioning, and he wouldn't meet her eyes. He was intimidated. The crown prince that would eliminate anyone who stood up to him wasn't supposed to give in to anyone. General Chang thought the world had gone insane. No, he himself had gone insane. Although Feng had reminded him that His Royal Highness was fond of Miss Feng Wu, Chang San had always thought it was no more than a fling. Oh God! Recalling how rude he had been when he invited Feng Wu here, Chang San felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to flee the scene. However, as soon as he moved, Jun Linyuan turned his intense gaze on him. Stop! The crown prince's stare was emotionless and as sharp as a blade. Your Royal Highness, realizing that his conduct wouldn't go unpunished, Chang San got down on his knees. Who told you to bring her here? Jun Linyuan gave off a frighteningly cold air. So, Jun Linyuan hadn't known about this, and Feng Wu had misunderstood him. Feng Wu turned to stare at Chang San. Chang San pleaded for mercy. Your Royal Highness, I thought you wanted to see Miss Feng Wu, so I took the liberty to invite her here. When did I say I wanted to see her? Angry and embarrassed, the crown prince raised a foot toward Chang San. Poor Chang San. He was kicked away immediately. He flew out of the room and disappeared from sight. Jun Linyuan turned his black eyes on Feng Wu. Did you see that? Feng Wu snorted. Even if it wasn't your doing, it doesn't change the fact that he works for you. Jun Linyuan, you can't shirk responsibility like that. Jun Linyuan asked, what do you want me to do, then? Feng Wu heaved a sigh. What an undeserved catastrophe. She had done nothing but mind her own business. Crossing her arms behind her back, Feng Wu said, I don't want anything. I just don't want to ever see you again. She had learned that she could find leads on the second broken star piece from old Shenyuan, so she didn't need anything from Jun Linyuan anymore. At that thought, Feng Wu snorted and promptly turned to leave. However, she didn't notice that at her words, the crown prince's face had turned livid right away. Chapter 1054. Hey, Jun Linyuan. Stay away from me. Do you think you can come and go just like that? There was a cold look in Jun Linyuan's eyes all of a sudden, and he swept his wide sleeve through the air. Thump. A white ice wall fell down from above, blocking Feng Wu's way. Caught by surprise, Feng Wu almost bumped into it. Damn it! Feng Wu knitted her pretty eyebrows. Right now, she had already left the study and was in the open courtyard. If one direction was blocked, she could always choose another one. Instead of going forward, Feng Wu turned west. She decided to jump over the wall. However, she was only able to take a few steps after she had to change direction. Thump. Another ice wall fell down and blocked Feng Wu's way. Feng Wu's nose almost knocked into it. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu was furious. How could he do that? Resting his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan stood proudly in the courtyard, the lower hem of his clothes flapping in the air. His white clothes were a stark contrast to the red in his eyes, which flickered with an intimidating light in them. His clothes floated airily above the ground and fluttered with the wind. He stood there with his hands tucked in his wide sleeves. Here in this empire, he could take a person out with a flick of his wrist, eliminating anyone that got in his way. He wielded the ultimate power. And everyone treated him with utmost respect. But now, Feng Wu charged at Jun Linyuan, stomping all the way, and glared at him. Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you want? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu without saying a word. Feng Wu said, since you didn't invite me here, I can go if I want to, right? Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Wu turned east, but thump. Another ice wall fell from above, almost smashing into Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. This was outrageous. Even with her mild temper, she couldn't hold back her fury any longer. 4 of the 3 directions in this spacious courtyard were blocked by ice walls. She was essentially enclosed in an open-ended ice cube that was 3 by 3 meters in size. There was even a ceiling, which made it impossible for Feng Wu to jump out. Her only way out was through Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu sensed something dangerous in Jun Linyuan's eyes, and she was alarmed. No, she couldn't stay here anymore. Look! What's that? Feng Wu pointed at the sky. When Jun Linyuan looked up, Feng Wu used all her strength and rushed toward him, trying to slip past him. That was how she had gotten away last time. But today. Thump. Feng Wu felt as if she had bumped into a chest made of stone. She could see stars, and felt giddy and dazzled. Despite the pain, Feng Wu looked up with teary eyes to meet Jun Linyuan's brooding black ones. There was no warmth in them. He reminded her of death itself, and the pressure he was giving off was enough to give anyone the creeps. Feng Wu stumbled back involuntarily. However, the domineering crown prince pressed closer. Thump. The last ice wall fell down, cutting off Feng Wu's last escape route. Hey, Jun Linyuan. Stay away from me. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was so frightening that they seemed to be covered in a dark red color. He kept his unblinking gaze on her. It was as if she was prey, and he was the patient hunter. Feng Wu kept backing away, and his royal highness kept closing in on her. Because they were in the courtyard, all eyes in the residence turned in their direction. The white walls had created an enclosure in the yard, but they couldn't shut out the voices inside. Everyone was able to hear what they were saying. Chapter 1055. What are your terms, Jun Linyuan? Although no one dared to go and see what was happening, it was human nature to be inquisitive. Even Feng and Granny Gong couldn't help but strain their necks and prick up their ears. Granny Gong asked, did His Royal Highness come back to his senses all of a sudden? Feng wasn't as optimistic. I don't think so. Granny Gong looked up at the sky. Speaking of which, as soon as Miss Feng Wu got here, the clouds over our house automatically disappeared. The Crown Prince himself was the core of the formation set up in his residence. When he was in a grim mood, the sky above the house would be just as dark. Feng looked at Chang San, who had fallen out of the sky and was spitting up blood a few steps away, and shook his head. Get Guer from the Imperial Guards here. Inside the enclosed ice walls. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan with a flustered look on her face. What do you want? The look on the Crown Prince's face was grim. What do you think? As he spoke, Jun Linyuan put his slender hands on Feng Wu's shoulders and gave her a half-smile. Since you're already here, if I don't do something to you now, Chang-san's death would be for nothing, wouldn't it? Jun Linyuan had leaned in so close that Feng Wu could feel his hot breath on her skin. Feng Wu was rarely terrified, but she could detect arousal in Jun Linyuan's eyes, which were so close. Her stomach lurched. This wasn't good. Did he want to, right here in the courtyard? She was in his territory, and he was much too prominent and powerful for her to handle. Although she was making unbelievable progress, she was but an ant in Jun Linyuan's eyes. Jun Linyuan's fingers were already touching the front of Feng Wu's clothes, and she could sense the heat in his hands. Her heart was pounding. Wait. What did he say? Chang-san's death? Are you going to kill Chang-san? Grabbing Jun Linyuan's advancing hands, Feng Wu opened her eyes wide. Jun Linyuan smirked. He disobeyed his master and made an arbitrary decision. What other punishment does he deserve? Feng Wu had struggled throughout her life, but she respected lives, and didn't trample on them. But now, she could see that other people were merely ants in Jun Linyuan's eyes. She had doubted before when other people called him cold and merciless, but she understood now. Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. What if I tell you that I won't let that happen? Jun Linyuan sneered at Feng Wu. Feng Wu's head spun with thoughts. From the way Jun Linyuan put it, Chang-san wouldn't be in his service anymore, and had to die. However, despite the rude way Chang-san had brought her here, Feng Wu didn't think that was worth the death penalty. No one will employ him after I fire him. Jun Linyuan sneered. I will. How about you give him to me? The more Feng Wu thought about it, the more excited she became. What was the one thing she lacked? Power. She needed the extra manpower to protect her family and Fallen Star Yard. As the chief of Jun Linyuan's guards, Chang-san would be perfect for the job. The Zhou family still wanted to kill her, and with Chang-san's protection. Feng Wu was so thrilled that she grabbed Jun Linyuan's hands and looked at him with bright, sparkling eyes. Give Chang-san to me. Jun Linyuan, make an offer. Anything. Feng Wu patted her chest, looking all confident. Feng could hear Feng Wu's voice, too. Granny Gong praised Feng Wu. Our future lady of the house is merciful and knows right from wrong. I like that. Feng darted a look at Granny Gong. Even someone as smart as Granny Gong had missed it. This had been a trap set by His Royal Highness, and everything was going to plan. Chapter 1056 Jun Linyuan the Fox. That was unexpected. Their crown prince seemed to be able to think straight again now that little Feng Wu was around. Making Chang-san little Feng Wu's official guard was the same as announcing the special relationship between Feng Wu and the crown prince. By using Chang-san, Feng Wu would be subtly taking advantage of Jun Linyuan's reputation. However, that was a favor that would need to be paid back. Feng stroked his beard. This was fun. Meanwhile, in that closed-off area, Feng Wu was looking expectantly at Jun Linyuan with bright eyes. Say yes, please. Please. She involuntarily raised her tone toward the end, and Jun Linyuan felt as if a feather was brushing against his heart and tickling him. Jun Linyuan raised his chin proudly. Give him to you. Well, that's doable. What are you going to trade him for? Feng Wu asked. Well, what do you want? Jun Linyuan looked as proud as ever. I can get whatever I want myself. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. How about, say, I owe you one. Sounds good. I can make very quick progress, and a favor from me will be worth a lot one day. Jun Linyuan only smiled without saying a word. Feng Wu tugged at his sleeve. You're going to kill Chang-san anyway, how much more do you want from a man doomed to die? Jun Linyuan, just say yes, please. Pretty please. Feng Wu had no idea how attractive she looked to the crown prince when she tugged at his sleeve and pleaded. Fine. Jun Linyuan waved her off. Take him. Although, he'll have nothing to do with this residence from now on. Of course. I wouldn't want it any other way. Feng Wu smiled in satisfaction. She hadn't expected to be able to recruit such impressive help when she woke up that morning. Feng Wu was thrilled. Meanwhile, Chang-san had crawled to Feng's feet and was pleading with the latter to save him. Feng shook his head. You can get away with offending other people, but death is what you get for offending Miss Feng Wu. Only then did Chang-san realize how important Miss Feng Wu was to His Royal Highness. The closed-off area opened up, and Feng Wu came out, looking satisfied. She smiled at Chang-san. Chang-san had heard the entire conversation inside. Right now, his choice was to die if he didn't go with Feng Wu, or go with Feng Wu and live. Are you coming with me or not? Narrowing her eyes, Feng Wu stared at Chang-san with eyes as sharp as a blade. Chang-san looked up at Jun Linyuan, who looked as domineering as ever. Kneeling down in front of Feng Wu, Chang-san stuck a hand into his own chest. Blood splashed everywhere. Feng Wu's pupils contracted. Jun Linyuan said indifferently, that's a blood oath. He has pledged his loyalty to you, and will be struck by lightning if he defies you. Feng Wu didn't know that one could do that, but she felt much more reassured this way. Activating her green light, she cured Chang-san's wound in 5 minutes. After everything was sorted out, Feng Wu proposed to take Chang-san back. Jun Linyuan didn't stop her this time, and let her leave. Watching Feng Wu leave, the crown prince had a gleam in his eyes. Feng and Granny Gong exchanged looks. It was starting. God knew what the crown prince had read during the 3 days he shut himself inside, or what he had come up with. He now really looked like a hunter. Looking at Feng Wu from behind, Feng rubbed his chin and shook his head with a wry smile. It seemed that Miss Feng Wu had walked into the trap. Feng Wu knew that bringing Chang-san back home would create unnecessary trouble, but she also knew that Chang-san's presence would eliminate a lot of trouble for her as well. Such as trouble from the Feng clan. Chapter 1057 Feng Wu's back. Feng Wu went back to the Feng clan. Meanwhile in the Feng manor. Because Feng Wu had been carried off, nearly everyone in the Feng clan thought that Feng Wu was doomed. Especially Feng Sang and Feng Lu. They were doing their best to spread the rumor. Feng Wu was taken away by the crown prince's residence. Feng Wu is so dead. She's never going to get out of there alive. Feng had a grim look on his face, and one couldn't tell if he was pleased or not. He felt conflicted. His current job position had been obtained through Feng Wu, and if she was dead, she wouldn't be able to help him anymore. And she had offended His Royal Highness. With Feng Wu dead, we won't have to see that eyesore pop up everywhere. Lady Wang was thrilled, and she said to Feng, Master, don't you think that our branch of the family has had bad luck ever since Feng Wu came back to the imperial capital from the northern border? Feng gave it some thought and realized that that was indeed the case. From Feng Lu and Feng Sang to his wife and himself. If I'm guessing correctly, Feng Wu has to be behind all this. Lady Wang snorted. Feng Lu and the others nodded. Now that Feng Wu has been carried off, there's no doubt that she'll die a miserable death. We have to make sure that His Royal Highness doesn't turn his anger on us. Lady Wang looked eagerly at Feng. Master, I have a suggestion, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate. Feng glanced at his wife. With everything that has happened, propriety is the last thing I'm concerned about. Speak. How about, we remove Feng Wu's name from our clan tree, said Lady Wang slowly. Remove her name? Lady Wang went on, Master, it's His Royal Highness that Feng Wu offended. If the Crown Prince lashes out at us, this clan has already weakened, and we can't afford more accidents. Feng gritted his teeth. That. Seeing that Feng was relenting, Lady Wang shot a glance at her children. Lady Wang was so worried. 5 years ago, when Zhuo Qingluan did that thing to Feng Wu, Lady Wang and her children had all been part of the scheme. One could say that they were part of the reason that Feng Wu was crippled. That was why Lady Wang blanched when she learned that Feng Wu had gotten her ability back. She had been on edge ever since, and didn't dare leave the house. Father, please remove Feng Wu's family from this clan. They'll only incriminate us. Father, Feng Wu is never coming back. And in her family, her mother could potentially be trouble. We have to get rid of her. Lady Wang's eyes lit up. Who knows when she'll go wild again? Master, when she's in that state, she's so strong that even you. Feng was reminded of how Lady Xuanji had thrown him around, and his face turned scarlet red. He smacked the table. All eyes were on him. All right. There was a malicious look in Feng's eyes. Just to be safe, let's wait until we receive news from the Crown Prince's residence. Feng Wu was like a cat with 9 lives. She just wouldn't die. Every time they thought she was dead, she would show up unexpectedly. That was why Feng decided to be more cautious. I'll send someone to ask around. Feng Yiran turned to leave. Just then, hasty footsteps came from outside. It was the steward of the house. Master! I've got great news. Great news! The steward ran as fast as his doddering legs would let him. Feng and his family all rose to their feet. What news? Had Feng Wu been executed? The steward's forehead was covered with sweat, and he smiled as he gasped for breath. Miss Wu is back. And not only that, she's... Chapter 1058 He is the captain of the guard of Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu was back. Hearing the steward's words, Feng and his family were dumbfounded. They had decided to find a way to remove Feng Wu's branch of the family from the Feng clan after His Royal Highness killed Feng Wu. Moreover, Feng even had some unspeakable plan for Lady Xuanji. But now that Feng Wu was back, Feng and his family were all astonished. However, when Feng Wu went up to them, they were even more surprised when they saw the person following her. General Chang. Everyone stared at the person in disbelief. Only 2 hours ago, the general had charged in with a team of guards from the Crown Prince's manor, looking almighty and awe-inspiring. But now, Xiao Wu, you're back. Something clicked in Feng's head, and he changed his attitude right away, greeting her with a surprised smile on his face. Feng Wu nodded and looked at the family suspiciously. It was rather rare to see this branch of the family all gathered together. What evil plan had they come up with this time? Uncle, where are you going? Judging by the direction in which they were headed, Feng Wu saw that they were going to Fallen Star Yard. Of course Feng didn't dare tell Feng Wu the truth. Moreover, General Chang was here, and it was only natural that Feng greeted him first. General Chang, I apologize for not greeting you at the front gate. I hope you're not offended. Feng smiled obsequiously. Meanwhile, General Chang was conflicted. Only 2 hours ago, he was still General Chang of the Crown Prince's residence, who answered to only one person. Even all the civil and military officials had to greet him respectfully. But now, his master had changed to the unwanted 5th daughter of the Feng clan. The fallen status was too huge for him to accept just yet. General Chang threw a dirty look at Feng. Master Feng, are you mocking me? Mocking? Where did that come from? Feng's eyes widened. He was so confused. General Chang looked away. Feng Wu glanced at General Chang. It seemed that Chang-san wasn't reconciled to Jun Linyuan's decision to make him work for her. But he had no choice. He had to go with Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't mind. She had all the time in the world, and she knew it was only a matter of time before she convinced Chang-san. Feng Wu grinned. "Uncle, he's not General Chang anymore. Addressing him that way is mocking him. He's not General Chang anymore, so..." Feng Yanfeng was utterly surprised. "Right now, he's Chang-san, the captain of the guard of my fallen star yard," said Feng Wu with a smile. "Bullshit." Feng Lu stared at Feng Wu. "General Chang is the captain of His Royal Highness's guards. He can't be working for you. That's preposterous. What if it's real?" Feng Wu smiled at Feng Lu. She didn't mind playing Feng Lu a little. Feng Lu wanted to say something, but Feng Yuan tugged at her to stop. Not everyone in this branch of the family was a fool. Feng Yuan saw that General Chang kept silent after everything Feng Wu said, and his stomach lurched. Feng Yuan said, "Is General Chang really your guard now?" Feng Wu glanced at him. "What do you think?" Feng Yuan frowned. "How?" Feng Wu replied, "His Royal Highness gave him to me." After that, Feng Wu turned to Chang-san. "From now on, you're only responsible for the safety of Fallen Star Yard. You don't need to take orders from anyone else in this clan." Chapter 1059 Unbelievable. Chang-san was frustrated and had an indecipherable look on his face, but he still gave Feng Wu a nod. So, it was true. After Feng Wu led Chang-san away, Feng Yanfeng and his family looked at one another in shock for a long time. How is that possible? This can't be happening. Feng Lu was the first to cry out. He's General Chang, His Royal Highness's greatest right-hand man. Why would His Royal Highness give him away just like that? They were still in too great a shock to recover any time soon. Sister, didn't you say that His Royal Highness was horrible to Feng Wu in Imperial College? You said he bullied her and humiliated her, right? Feng Lu stared at Feng Sang. Feng Sang nodded. It's true. Many of my classmates can attest to it. Then why did His Royal Highness have General Chang come back with Feng Wu? Feng Lu couldn't understand it. Is it possible that His Royal Highness sent General Chang here to monitor her? Feng Lu's eyes lit up. She refused to believe that His Royal Highness was into Feng Wu. Feng Sang shook her head. With His Royal Highness's power, he doesn't need to monitor her. He can just kill her. Then why? No one could figure it out, and they had distressed faces. Feng Yanfeng looked around with an authoritative expression on his face, and he said with a snort, "Not a word about what we discussed before. Do you hear me?" Before, they had been trying to figure out a way to remove Feng Wu's family from the clan, but now, she had just brought General Chang back as the captain of her guard. What could they do now? Feng Yuan and the others didn't like it, but they had no choice but to accept this depressing fact. Anyway, there has to be something behind it. Feng Lu clenched her fists. In the Feng clan, people could tell how things were changing around the house. That was why a lot of the servants began to talk. Have you noticed? Miss Wu is getting very self-important these days. You don't say. That was the captain of His Royal Highness's guards, and she brought him back. Do you think Miss Wu and His Royal Highness? Don't say stupid things. In any case, whether they are in a relationship or not, we can all see that the head of the clan treats Miss Wu with respect now. Do you remember? When the second branch of the family came back from northern border city 6 months ago, all they had was a single carriage. Lady Wang could crush them at any moment, but now, Lady Wang doesn't even dare sneer at Feng Wu. I heard from some old members of the clan that the position of clan head should have belonged to Feng Wu's family. Feng Wu had no idea of the servants' reactions, but even if she did, she probably wouldn't care. Fallen Star Yard. After Feng Wu was carried off, her family panicked. Chaoga ran next door to ask Grand Secretary Feng for help. However, Grand Secretary Feng only smiled mildly. Don't worry. The girl will be back in no time. Given how wise Grand Secretary Feng was, he was able to reach this conclusion based on what he knew. He realized that the Crown Prince treated Feng Wu differently. Jun Linyuan was an extremely rare genius, and Grand Secretary Feng saw great potential in him. He would love to see the Crown Prince become a couple with Feng Wu. But Grand Secretary Feng also realized that Chaoga knew nothing about it. She was furious when Grand Secretary Feng refused to help, and decided to go to the Crown Prince's residence to help Feng Wu. Before she could leave the house, Feng Wu came swaggering in. "Xiao Wu, you're back." Chaoga threw herself at Feng Wu as soon as she saw the latter, and wouldn't let go of Feng Wu's waist. Chapter 1060 Secret of Fallen Star Yard. The other members of Fallen Star Yard were beyond joyful. Chaoga looked past Feng Wu and saw Chang San behind her. She flared up right away and glared at him. "How dare you show up here? You kidnapped a civilian, do you realize that? Even if you work for His Royal Highness, you can't." Fearing that Chaoga might say something worse, Feng Wu stopped her. "He doesn't work for Jun Linyuan anymore." "Ha!" Chaoga looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu nodded earnestly. "He's the captain of the guard of Fallen Star Yard now, not Jun Linyuan's General Chang." "What?" Those words shocked everyone in Fallen Star Yard. Granny Zhao took Feng Wu's hand. "Miss, you can't make up a thing like that." When General Chang came here before, it was clear to them that even Feng Yanfeng fawned on him, but now, according to Feng Wu. Instead of answering their questions, Feng Wu turned to Chang San with a stern look on her face. "Chang San, from now on, you're in charge of the security of Fallen Star Yard." "Problem?" Chang San stared at Feng Wu with a conflicted look in his eyes. If he had a choice, he would say no, but he recalled what Feng had said before he left. "Working for Miss Feng Wu will be a great opportunity for you. Just go." "A great opportunity?" Looking around the narrow courtyard, Chang San couldn't tell where that great opportunity was, but because of the blood oath he took, Chang San had no choice but to nod. "Yes." Everyone stared at Chang San in disbelief. They then turned to stare at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave them a slight nod. "Chang San will be living here in Fallen Star Yard from now on. Granny Zhao, clean out an empty room for him." Granny Zhao said, "Yes, Mississippi." "Uncle Chiu, tell him about the do's and don'ts of Fallen Star Yard." Feng Wu gave the instruction. Uncle Chiu was speechless. Uncle Chiu had only just made it to the spiritual grandmaster stage, but General Chang, his spiritual essence was as profound as the vast, bottomless ocean. Uncle Chiu smiled wryly. "Yes." Feng Wu treated Chang San the same way she treated the other members of Fallen Star Yard, but the others didn't dare treat Chang San as casually. After all, Chang San was a frighteningly capable man, both in status and ability. Seeing this, Feng Wu could only shake her head with a wry smile and hope that the others would get used to it soon. That night the members of Fallen Star Yard were busy cultivating. Feng Wu was in her room, trying to make a breakthrough to level 7 of the spiritual grandmaster stage. Feng Xiaoqi, Qiling, and Uncle Chiu all sat in their respective rooms, absorbing the essence of moonlight and refining the spiritual essence which their bodies required. They had been making quick progress since receiving manuals from Feng Wu. With the help of the Taiyi formation, their cultivation had become more efficient. This was especially the case for Qiling. Her capability had increased significantly after Feng Wu changed her physical endowment. Chang San scanned Fallen Star Yard with his spiritual essence. All of a sudden, he felt a sting on his forehead and he cried out inwardly at the pain. Wait! His spiritual essence didn't work? He only saw a sea of blackness when he scanned Fallen Star Yard. That shouldn't be the case. Chang San extended his spiritual essence outside Fallen Star Yard toward the rest of the Feng Manor. It even reached as far as the courtyard of Feng Yanfeng's family. With his spiritual essence, he could see Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang having a quarrel. Lady Wang even ended up being slapped by Feng Yanfeng. So, Chang San knew that there was nothing wrong with his spiritual essence. But, why couldn't he see anything in Fallen Star Yard? There was something strange about Fallen Star Yard. It hadn't crossed Chang San's mind earlier, but now that he had the time, he began to notice things. Chapter 1061 Assassination After Dark. Although he couldn't see anything with his spiritual essence, he could still hear the sound of rhythmic breathing in the rooms next door. Chang San smirked. The people in this courtyard were no more capable than ants. What good would their efforts do? Sitting cross-legged, Chang San started cultivating himself. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. The spiritual essence was so dense. When he opened up his dantian to absorb the spiritual essence, he realized that the spiritual essence here was as dense as that of the Crown Prince's residence, if not better. What on earth was going on here? Chang San thought that it was an illusion, but soon saw that it wasn't. Not only was the spiritual essence dense, it was pure as well. Rumble. He then heard the faint crackling sound of spiritual essence. Had someone made a breakthrough? What a coincidence! Chang San was thinking this to himself, when he heard another faint sound of the fluctuation of spiritual essence. That! If the first time was a coincidence, what about the next? Could that be a coincidence, too? To Chang San's surprise, there was a third sound. He was lost for words. Even if they were all low-level cultivators, this was still way too fast. Were the people in this courtyard even human? Since Chang San couldn't figure it out, he decided to stop thinking. He was going to try it himself. He closed his eyes, opened up his dantian, and entered the cultivation state. Soon. He felt the pure, dense spiritual essence flooding in. Chang San couldn't believe it. He thought he was starting to understand what Feng meant by this great opportunity. He couldn't get enough of the spiritual essence of Fallen Star Yard. This had to be an essence-gathering formation. Chang San was right. The Taiyi formation wasn't just a defensive formation. More importantly, it could gather spiritual essence for its hosts to use. Chang San had an inkling that if he went on cultivating here, he might be able to break through that bottleneck that had been holding him back. This was such a wonderful cultivation spot. One couldn't find a better one in the entire imperial capital. Chang San could hardly contain his excitement. Just as he suppressed his excitement and was ready to put his mind to his cultivation, all of a sudden he sensed something aggressive in the air. Interrupted, Chang San opened his eyes and looked displeased. 3 ghost-like shadows jumped over the wall and charged in like shooting stars. They were fast. Judging by their speed as they ran along the walls and roofs, Chang San was sure that these 3 people had reached perfection in the spiritual elder stage at the very least. Feng Wu was only a spiritual grandmaster at the moment, and even one of these individuals would be enough to overpower her, let alone 3. Feng Wu was cultivating with her eyes closed when she heard Little Phoenix's shrill voice in her ear. "We have company." Feng Wu's eyes snapped open and shone coldly in the dark. Little Phoenix was right. They were under attack. Rising to her feet, Feng Wu moved as fast as a streak of lightning. She hid herself in a dark corner before taking out a handful of golden needles. The 3 figures were tall, short and fat respectively, and had quite distinctive features. They ran in 2 directions as fast as they could. They headed for Feng Wu's and Lady Xuanji's rooms. 2 went for Feng Wu and 1 ran toward Lady Xuanji's room. Feng Wu's eyes glinted coldly. As if targeting her wasn't enough, they were going to attack her mother, too. That was more than Feng Wu could bear. When the short and the fat men reached Feng Wu's door, Feng Wu gripped her golden needles more tightly. At the same time, she quietly took a dagger out of her sleeve. Chapter 1062 What's going on? Crack. In the dark, the short man in black gripped the door lock. The next second, the lock gave with a little click. As soon as the door opened, Feng Wu threw out her golden needles. A cold gust of wind swept through the room. The short man crouched down instantly and swiftly dodged the needles. But Feng Wu hadn't been trying to inflict injury with the needles, and instead was forcing him to move as she wanted. Just as the short man dropped onto his stomach and secretly rejoiced at dodging the needles, he realized that his hands seemed stuck to the ground, making it difficult for him to pull them back. But it was only difficult, not impossible. Having reached perfection at the spiritual elder stage, the fat man wasn't going to be defeated that easily. He used all his strength to pull his hands back, and struck out in the direction that the needles had come from. But Feng Wu was nowhere to be found. She had moved away already, and there was a black rebounding wall where she had been standing. As the name suggested, that wall caused spiritual essence to rebound. Therefore, all the power that the short man had exerted was bounced back at equal force. Boom! The formidable spiritual essence rushed toward him at an unbelievable speed. Thump! The short man opened his eyes wide. How could this be? However, his instincts as a killer made him react quickly. There was something strange about this room. After his own spiritual essence bounced back, the short man ran toward the courtyard as fast as he could. Even so, he wasn't able to completely dodge the rebound. The short assassin grunted. He had clearly been injured. Beside him, the fat man was surprised to see what happened to his short colleague. How? As soon as the fat man opened his mouth, the short man glared at him. We've got a tough one. Help me out here. The short man had thought the task was too simple at first, and had told the fat man to stand by and just watch. Hence, the fat assassin had leaned on the doorframe to watch the supposed slaughter with a smile. But to his surprise, the slaughter never happened. Instead, the short man had been forced out of the room. A tough one? That did seem to be the case. The fat man smirked and suddenly drew out his sword. However, the door stayed open, and nothing moved inside. The short man and the fat man exchanged looks and saw surprise in each other's eyes. What was wrong with this courtyard? With everything that had happened, how could the people inside remain motionless like this, as if they were all dead? Under normal circumstances, shouldn't they be screaming? But no, the entire courtyard remained utterly quiet. Something wasn't right. The two men exchanged concerned looks. Wait, where was the tall man? He hadn't come out after going into the other room, nor was there any sound. It was frighteningly quiet. The two men exchanged looks. Just then, the tall man that had rushed into Lady Xuanji's room suddenly let out an ear-splitting scream. Ah! In the silent night, that scream sent chills down their spines. What happened? Without thinking, the two assassins rushed into Feng Wu's room at top speed. Chapter 1063 Mighty General Chang. Their mission was to eliminate Feng Wu, while kidnapping Lady Xuanji was only their secondary goal. Seeing that the situation had changed, they decided to kill Feng Wu as quickly as possible and bring her head back to claim their reward. However, before they could rush in, they saw a teenage girl dressed in red standing under the cherry blossom tree in the courtyard. Her floaty dress fluttered in the wind. It wasn't cherry blossom season yet, but to their surprise, the flowers were in full bloom, and the falling petals danced in the moonlight. Feng Wu. The short assassin had a cold, murderous look in his eyes. The mission came with a letter of appointment, and Feng Wu's portrait had been in it. Feng Wu wasn't standing there by herself. Next to her was Chang San, who had a cold look in his eyes. He was about to move, when Feng Wu stopped him. She gave him a sideway glance. I need to train. Chang San was noticeably losing his patience, for he had had a moment of epiphany during his cultivation just then, and he was eager to put it into use and make some progress in his cultivation. Hence, Chang San stared at the shorty and the fatty with an aggressive look in his eyes. They're merely a pair of useless spiritual elders. Do whatever you want with them. With those words, Chang San held his sword between his crossed arms and leaned against the cherry blossom tree. Useless spiritual elders. The corner of Feng Wu's lips twitched. The captain of Jun Linyuan's guards was probably the only one that could make that statement. Feng Wu was a spiritual grandmaster herself. In any other situation, she wouldn't even try to fight a spiritual elder, and would take off right away. But it was different today. They were on her territory. With her Taiyi formation and the fact that Chang San was guarding her on the side, Feng Wu decided to practice her skills. The two assassins sneered at Feng Wu's words. "You brat! How bold of you! It's time for you to surrender." Feng Wu shook her head. "I want to have a match." The shorty said, "Where do you think you are? A martial arts arena? Kiddo, we're assassins. Get it?" This was the first time that the two assassins had run into a mere spiritual grandmaster who wasn't afraid of them, two spiritual elders. Their cultivation levels were an entire stage apart, and the difference between their capabilities was too great to overlook. A further delay will only mean more complications. "Let's do this together." The two assassins exchanged looks, and the next second, they charged at Feng Wu together. Their client had put a very high price on Feng Wu's head. Once they accomplished this mission, they would be able to live comfortably without needing to work for the next 3 years. Seeing the two blades come at her, Feng Wu had an expectant smile on her face. She needed to practice her sword stances, the ones known as Fallen Star swordplay, which her master taught her the other day. However, Feng Wu wouldn't be able to take the two of them together, so she grinned at Chang San. Taking Feng Wu's hint, Chang San rolled his eyes in resignation, and the next second, he raised his hand slightly. Wu stood in a split second, only one of the two assassins was still facing Feng Wu, for Chang San was holding the other one. Thud! Twisting the fatty's wrist so that the sword was aimed at the man's own belly, Chang San then impaled the fatty to the tree with it. The fatty looked completely baffled. This wasn't supposed to happen. Didn't the info say that Feng Wu, a level 4 spiritual grandmaster, was the most capable cultivator in Fallen Star Yard? The rest of the members were supposed to be petty level 3 and level 1 spiritual grandmasters as well as a level 6 spiritual master. But why was this man here? He was far beyond a spiritual elder. Chang San used to be the captain of the Crown Prince's guards, so of course he was a very capable cultivator. Chapter 1064 Since you, already here, you may as well fight me. Chang San stared at the fatty with a ferocious look in his eyes, and was about to snap the latter's neck. However, Feng Wu stopped him. "Hold it." Chang San glanced at Feng Wu in resignation. He realized that his new master had a very different style from his Royal Highness. If it were up to his Royal Highness, these assassins would be annihilated with a snap of his fingers. He would never bother to talk to them. However, Chang San had made a blood oath to give his allegiance to Feng Wu, and he could only leave the fatty alone for the time being, despite his reluctance. At the same time, the shorty stared at Feng Wu so hard that his eyes popped out. How was that even possible? What a terrifying man. The shorty finally knew why his tall colleague had screamed like that in Lady Xuanji's room. It had to be this capable man's doing. At that thought, the shorty turned to flee. He could afford to fail a mission, but he only had one life. However, it was no longer up to him if he could leave. He tried to jump onto the wall, but while it seemed so close, it was forever in the distance, no matter how hard he tried. What on earth was going on here? Feng Wu's bone-chilling voice rang out behind him. "Do you think Fallen Star Yard is a place where you can come and go as you please?" She hadn't reached the cultivation level she wanted, but she had been working hard to get there. The Taiyi formation, Grand Secretary Feng, General Chang, these were all things and people she could rely on. The shorty turned to glare at Feng Wu. "You brat! What did you do?" Feng Wu smiled. "Since you're already here, you may as well fight me." "I won't." The shorty glared at Feng Wu. The assassin had no idea what cultivation level the man behind Feng Wu was at, but since he could subdue his fellow assassin in one move, he had to be a spiritual lord at least. How was he supposed to fight this girl with that man around? He won't interfere. Feng Wu walked toward the shorty with a grin. You mean it? The assassin asked. Feng Wu said earnestly, yes, as long as I win. The shorty was so mad that his face twisted. He wouldn't interfere if she won, but he would if she lost. What was the point of fighting? At that thought, the shorty seemed to notice a loophole. He couldn't jump over the wall leading to the street, but the wall separating the house from their next-door neighbor seemed unguarded. He didn't know how he knew that, but he trusted his instincts. When Feng Wu wasn't looking, the shorty ran as fast as he could, jumped over the wall, and headed for Feng Manor. Run, run, run. The shorty had forgotten completely about killing Feng Wu. All he could think of was running. He didn't want to be killed. However, he failed to notice the smile in Feng Wu's eyes when he jumped over the wall. Fallen Star Yard was on the edge of the formation, where the formation wasn't as effective as it was at the core. Why was Feng Manor the only direction he could run in? Feng Wu had closed off all the other 3 directions and lured her prey into the center of the formation in Feng Manor. The shorty smirked when he landed in Feng Manor. However, the next second, his smile froze on his face. For he could clearly sense some electric arcs flashing around him. All was dark except for the lightning which surrounded him. There was nowhere for him to hide. Moreover, he felt like he had been sucked into a swamp, and gravity seemed to be pulling him even further down. The shorty tried to jump up, but realized that he couldn't. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had followed him and jumped over the wall herself. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.